What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Naruto saved a fallen angel who swore to be his eternal guardian? If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments. And also check the description to original creator of this beautiful creation. What am I doing here? Thought Naruto as he gazed up at the incredibly tall and imposing machine in front of him. It has been over 2,000 years and here he was still alive and healthy as he was when he had been just a kid. He looked no older than 20 and had a body that most men would kill for, though he wasn't bulky, but had a nice lean build. His sun-kissed blonde hair stuck up at all angles while his beautiful sky-blue eyes held little to no life in them. Living for as long as he had made him lose faith in all the things he used to believe in. Countless battles, wars, killing, and other horrible acts had made him a cold and closed-off individual. The man who used to fight to protect his precious people and innocence no longer existed, and all that was left was an empty shell. "Captain Naruto, I see this is where you have been hiding," said Azrael with a smirk as he approached Naruto. Naruto turned to look at the man through his emotionless eyes. He took a good look at the Blue Cosmos leader and was unimpressed by what he saw. The man was of average height and wore a very expensive blue suit that matched his blue hair. From the way he walked and the smirk on his face, one could easily tell he was full of himself because of his money and position, but Naruto had no patience for men like him. "Why are you here?" asked Naruto. Azrael couldn't stop the shiver that went down his spine as the man's emotionless eyes bore into his own. "I have come down here to see you and the newest Gundam that was built. When I heard that the prototype used to design all other Gundams had been built, I just couldn't resist the opportunity to see it," smirked Azrael as he stood next to Naruto, then looked up at the Gundam that was in front of them both. "I take it you were the one who requested I be the pilot of this Gundam," said Naruto knowingly. He should have known this man would request for him to personally pilot this Gundam. "Of course, you are the top pilot in the Earth Alliance, having never been shot down and the only other person besides Lieutenant Mula Flaga to have been able to fight on equal grounds as the damn coordinators and their mobile suits," said Azrael with a small chuckle. I hope you realize that I am not obligated to pilot this suit since I am part of a different branch of the Earth Alliance that you have no influence over," replied Naruto, causing Azrael to narrow his eyes in anger. It was true. The Earth Forces had their own elite organization that only took orders directly from the president, so Azrael could not order Naruto to do anything. This branch was similar to ZAFT's own faith members that only took orders from the chairman. "I am aware of this fact, but I thought you might change your mind once you saw this new mobile suit. I heard from your superior that you were unsatisfied with the mobile suit given to you, so I thought this might fit your tastes better. I mean, this mobile suit is what the 5 stolen Gundams, including the Strike, were all based off. I am sure with its capabilities you will be more than satisfied," grinned Azrael as he tried to lure the man into joining him. He was a fool to believe that Naruto didn't see through his underhanded manipulations, but he would learn his lesson eventually. "I have heard the last 4 pilots that have attempted to pilot this suit have all gone mentally insane," said Naruto as he stared at the Gundam. "Yes. Well, you see, this Gundam has a built-in AI called the Zero System, which allows the pilot to interface directly with the unit's combat computer. Unfortunately, none of our previous pilots has been able to handle the mental strain from the information upload. I am sure you won't have a problem though," replied Azrael dismissively. "What about the Buster rifle? It doesn't look like a standard beam rifle to me," said Naruto, already knowing what it was, but wanted to see if Azrael would tell him. "Regretfully, if you choose to pilot this Gundam you won't be allowed to use the Buster rifle at full power because it would be breaching the treaty we have with those damn coordinators about not resorting to nuclear-powered weapons," frowned Azrael to show he was clearly upset with that fact. "This Gundam has a nuclear core or something to that effect, so aren't you already breaching the agreement when you had this unit built?" replied Naruto. "Not really, but it is running off energy similar to that to nuclear power. That is why you can't use the prototype Buster rifle at full power, because those idiots will think it is a nuclear-powered weapon because of the damage it can do at full power and accuse us of breaching our agreement," shrugged Azrael as he had a glint in his eyes to show he really didn't care if he breached the treaty in some way. "What will my targets be?" asked Naruto, causing Azrael to smile in victory. "We will be heading to Orb to see if they will join us so that we can use their mass driver, and if they don't agree then we will be forced to use lethal force." Their nation is too much of a threat for us to continue to let them go unchecked like they have been, said Azrael. But Naruto could tell he just wanted an excuse to see this new Gundam in battle. I work alone, so I don't want to have to deal with any of those other pilots of yours because they will just get in my way, said Naruto, causing Azrael to grit his teeth in anger. The Blue Cosmos leader clearly didn't like having to cave to the demands of others, but knew he didn't have much of a choice if he wanted to gain Naruto's help. Fine, but you better not fail, demanded Azrael, but took a step back in fear when Naruto's eyes narrowed upon him. In 2 days I will be ready to test the unit's fighting capabilities, so have the Forbidden and Raider here by then. In order to test out the true capabilities of this Gundam I will need to fight against other Gundams, said Naruto. That sounds like an excellent idea, and it will allow me to see what those other units are capable as well. I will have them transferred here immediately, then once you are done testing the Gundam we can head to Orb, smiled Azrael. By the way, the name of this Gundam is Wing Zero. But feel free to change it if you want, shrugged Azrael before taking his leave. Wing Zero, muttered Naruto as he went back to staring at the Gundam. If his friends and family could see him now they would probably be extremely disappointed in him, since he was taking orders from a man no different than Orochimaru. Looks exactly like it does from Gundam Wing, but not Endless Waltz. Break. Captain Wilson had served in the military his entire life, which was reflected in his lifestyle and attitude. He was known to be a strict man, and despite him being slightly short in stature, he had an air about him that people seemed to fear and respect. If there was one thing he hated it was insubordination, but as of lately he had been questioning the military's actions, especially after what happened in Alaska once he received word about the higher-ups activating a Cyclops system. It seemed as if both sides were aiming for total genocide of the other, and if it kept up things would get completely out of control. On top of that, he had to put up with one of the most arrogant and spoiled brats he ever had the displeasure of meeting, Lord Azrael, leader of Blue Cosmos. The man was seriously getting on his nerves with his cocky attitude, but there was little he could do since the man outranked him. He would have continued to curse the man, but his thoughts were interrupted when the person he was waiting for arrived on the bridge of his carrier. Captain Uzumaki, it is good to see you again, said Captain Wilson as he nodded at the man. Naruto Uzumaki was probably the man he respected more than anyone else because even though the man was extremely cold and distant, he was someone you could count on in a tight spot. The man had saved his and many others' lives countless times in battle, which is one of the reasons most people looked up to him. Captain Wilson, you wished to speak with me? Asked Naruto with the same emotionless look in his eyes that he always had. The young man never showed any emotion and was always so cold that it made Captain Wilson along with many others wonder what happened to him in his past. Whatever happened to him must have horrible because nothing ever affected the man. Yes, I wanted to tell you that those 3 special mobile suits of Lord Azrael have arrived, and I was to inform you that you will be having a test run against the Forbidden and Raider at 1400 hours, said Captain Wilson calmly. It would be best if you keep at least a few miles away during the fight at all times. From the reports I have read on those pilots, they don't care much for exercising restraint even while allies are around, said Naruto with a slight frown before his face became neutral again. I was not aware of that, but it doesn't surprise me that these pilots of Azrael are uncontrollable since the man believes he is better than everyone else, frowned Captain Wilson. He wasn't worried about Naruto reporting him for bad-mouthing his higher-ups because the man didn't really care what people said and didn't waste his time on such trivial matters. I would think you would be more worried about fighting against them. If they are as reckless as you say, then I doubt they will hold back against you even if it is a spar, said Captain Wilson as he looked at Naruto curiously. They won't hold back, I have no doubt that Azrael told them to go all out against me, replied Naruto. I take it you aren't bothered by this fact? Said Captain Wilson with a knowing smirk. No, because it is the only way I will be able to truly test the capabilities of Wing Zero, answered Naruto. I am starting to believe what others say about you being suicidal, smirked Captain Wilson. If only dying was so easy, mumbled Naruto with a glazed look in his eyes. Captain Wilson heard what Naruto mumbled and gave him a strange look. He had never met a pilot who wanted to die, but then again he had never met anyone who he could say was similar to Naruto. Good luck, and I look forward to see you making fools of Azrael's men, chuckled Captain Wilson. Naruto just nodded his head at the man before taking his leave since he needed to be prepared for his fight. Hangar. I still can't believe we are wasting our time fighting against some rookie pilot and his new mobile suit when we could be doing better stuff, scowled Clotho as he started up his mobile suit. Who cares, just so long as this pilot proves a challenge before we kill him, then it doesn't matter who it is, smirked Shawnee as he got into his mobile suit. They didn't get to say anything more when Azrael appeared on their screen with his ever-constant smirk. Now remember boys, I don't want you to hold back because I want to see if this new mobile suit is as powerful as it looks or it was just a waste of money, said Azrael before cutting his connection with them. Let's do this, laughed Shawnee as the sides of the carrier opened up. Clotho and Shawnee both recognized a small blip on their radar and realized their new opponent was already waiting for them, so took off at full speeds towards their target. It wasn't long before both pilots reached their intended target as it calmly waited for them while floating in the air. This is it, I knew this would be a waste of time, growled Clotho as he prepared to draw his main weapon, which was a large spiked ball that could crush opposing enemy warship and carriers. Let's see how long this mobile suit can last, laughed Shawnee before drawing his large scythe and charging right at the Gundam. Clotho wasn't about to let him have all, so drew his beam rifle and started to fire at the unknown mobile suit. Show me your power, Wing Zero, thought Naruto as he went into action and dodged the beam shots while charging at the Forbidden. You're dead, laughed Shawnee as he swung his scythe downward, but his eyes narrowed in anger when Wing Zero used its shield to block it before he could complete his swing. Foolish, muttered Naruto as he delivered a right kick to Forbidden's chest that knocked it away. He was about to continue his assault, but was forced to dodge right as a large spiked ball passed through the space he was just occupying. Damn, he's fast, cursed Clotho as his weapon retracted back to its original length and he started to shoot at Wing Zero. Wing Zero easily dodged the shots, but was soon put on the defensive when the Forbidden started its attack upon it again. The Forbidden transformed into its close combat mode where it had now two large green panels protecting the upper arms, and these two large black things were coming out of each side of the chest. Naruto was almost caught off guard when the Forbidden fired its beam weapon and watched, as it seemed to bend in a curve. He didn't get much time to think of a counter as a large spiked ball was headed straight for his cockpit. Die bastard, yelled Clotho, but his eyes widened in shock as Zero quickly drew a beam saber from its right wing and used it to destroy his weapon. Zero then raised its shield and started to fire upon the Forbidden, but the beams from its Buster rifle were just deflected by those large green panels. Ha ha, laughed Shawnee as he charged in and tried to cut Zero in half with his scythe. Naruto managed to dodge out of the way in time, but quickly raised his shield to the right to deflect the beams fired at him from the Raider. The Raider started to fire upon Zero relentlessly without allowing it any room to counter, while the Forbidden started fire its own special beam at Zero. You'll pay for destroying my weapon, growled Clotho as he transformed into his mobile armor and started to use the two plasma cannons to fire upon Zero. Thought Naruto as he was forced on the ropes. He wasn't able to get close enough to use his beam saber against the Forbidden because the Raider kept firing upon him. The Forbidden and Raider were doing a good job at keeping him from mounting an offensive attack, but his luck was just about to change. It's all over, smirked Clotho as he had Zero in his sights, but right as he was about to fire he was forced to dodge to the side as Shawnee's own beam almost hit him. What the hell, Shawnee? Watch where you are shooting, yelled Clotho angrily. Shawnee just continued laughing and completely ignored Clotho as he continued his assault upon Naruto. Naruto's eyes narrowed in anger as he saw the Forbidden attack his own ally and didn't even seem to be bothered by it. He may have changed greatly over the centuries, but seeing someone attack their own teammate still brought up bad memories with him. It was after seeing that he finally decided to try out the Zero system. Die! Screamed Shawnee in glee as he was about to cut Wing Zero in half, but it did a backflip at the last second to dodge the attack. The Forbidden was about to fire its special beam, but couldn't as Zero fired a couple of shots at him with its Buster rifle. Shawnee smirked as he deflected the shots, but that second he paused to do that action was a huge mistake because two machine gun armaments came out of the shoulders of Wing Zero and fired at his deflectors. The deflectors were designed to deflect particle or plasma blasts and not shells, so they were completely destroyed. Ah! Screamed Shawnee as his deflectors were destroyed, and then before he could react he received a powerful kick in the chest from the Zero that sent him crashing into the water below. "You forgot about me, bastard," grinned Clotho as he came up behind the Zero, but his eyes widened in horror as it ducked under him and used its beam saber damage its right plasma cannon. With one of its plasma cannons damaged, the Raider transformed back into mobile suit form and started to fire at Wing Zero with its beam rifle. Wing Zero used its superior speed to dodge all the shots with ease, and it even looked like it was predicting where Raider was going to fire at next because no movement was wasted. "This can't be happening," gasped Clotho in fear, as Wing Zero was soon right in front of him with its beam saber raised above his head. Naruto was about to merely disable the Raider like he did the Forbidden, but he was forced to use both of Zero's legs and kick off the Raider right before a familiar particle beam passed through the space both Gundams were occupying a second ago. "You are going to die for what you did, bastard," screamed Shani as his eyes showed unconcealed rage. He started to fire recklessly at Naruto, and if he didn't stop he would end up killing his own partner who had barely dodged the last shot. "Stop moving," yelled Shani hysterically. What he didn't know was that Naruto had had enough of him. Naruto quickly discarded his beam saber and drew his buster rifle from out of his shield. He aimed right at the Forbidden's cockpit before firing 2 shots at the Gundam, but it merely used its thrusters to go right above the shots. "Ha ha, you miss," started Shani before his eyes widened in horror as a third shot came at him from inside the shield. He didn't even get a chance to scream as the shot tore right through his cockpit and obliterated him. The Forbidden floated in air for a second with a hole right through the chest before exploding in a shower of debris. "HN," said Naruto emotionlessly before raising his left arm to show a second buster rifle in the shield. He then brought both halves of the rifle together to form one large rifle that he now held in his right hand while his shield remained in his left. "Shani," spluttered Clotho with wide eyes, but didn't get to say more on the matter when Azrael appeared on his screen and ordered him to return to the ship right away. "Break." Naruto slowly came out of his cockpit and used the grappling line to get to the ground. He hit the ground and looked up to see Azrael and Captain Wilson waiting for him. Azrael had a look of glee on his face, which was surprising because most would think he would be upset that he lost one of his new mobile suits. "That was absolutely incredible. It seems Wing Zero is more powerful than I originally thought, especially with you as the pilot," smiled Azrael, as he knew now they had the perfect weapon to destroy the coordinators. "One would think you would be upset at losing a pilot and one of our newest mobile suits," said Captain Wilson as he hid his distaste of the man by keeping his face neutral. "Sacrifices must be made if we are to win this war against those damn coordinators, and it is clear this mobile suit will help us reach that goal. I can't wait to see it in a real battle, so have it prepared to be transferred to one of our ships that will be heading to Orb," shrugged Azrael. Captain Wilson was disgusted at how little the man valued life, but kept his opinions to himself like a good soldier. Naruto wasn't listening to either man as his thoughts and eyes were focused on Wing Zero. He was forced to use the Zero system to defeat the Forbidden and Raider, which was an interesting experience. It was clear now why all others who had tried to use the Zero system before him had gone insane from it. All the information flooding one's mind would drive anyone crazy, but due to Naruto having been used to receiving tons of information at once, he was able to prevent himself from losing his mind from all the data. No, what truly had him so focused on the Wing Zero was the strange vision he had received from the Gundam before he deactivated the Zero system. It was strange because he saw himself standing on a beach as he watched those around him having fun. He had a smile on his face while he watched everything because the world seemed to be in a state of peace. No such thing as peace, thought Naruto with a hint of anger as he dismissed the vision as nothing but a hallucination. He knew better than anyone that peace never lasted long because something always occurred to bring about death and destruction. It was inevitable and nothing could stop the endless cycle because he had already tried and failed countless times. Hoping for such things only left him with pain because no matter what he did, countless loved ones and friends would all eventually end up dying. This was the hard truth Naruto had come to accept long ago, which is why he no longer cared what side he fought for so long as he was put into battle to fight where death was possible. The only dream he had was to one day be killed on the battlefield so he could at least die with some honor since the rest of his dignity had been lost centuries ago. Orb, Lord Izumi, do you really believe that the Earth Alliance will attack you all if you don't agree to ally with them and meet their demands? Asked Kira. It pains me to say this, but there is no doubt in my mind they will attack us if we don't agree to their terms. They just lost Panama 2 days ago and now Zaft controls all the mass drivers on Earth besides ours. This is the real reason they are attacking us, replied Lord Izumi calmly. It's so stupid, yelled Kigali angrily. Yeah, but after what happened in Alaska, I am no longer surprised by their actions, said Mew with a shake of his head. I can't believe they would go so far as to attack a neutral nation just because you all refused to meet their ridiculous demands, sighed Maru. What will you do? Asked Kira, though he already knew the answer to that question. I will refuse to meet their demands and have the people of Orb start to evacuate immediately. If Orb doesn't stick to its ideals, then we become no different than the Earth Alliance or Zaft, answered Lord Izumi firmly. Well, if that's the case, then I would like to offer you my aid along with the Archangel. It is the least we can do for all your hospitality, said Maru with a small smile. Count me in too, since I'm not too happy with the Earth Alliance's actions of lately either, smirked Mew. Thank you, Orb, and I greatly appreciate you lending us your strength in our time of need, said Lord Izumi gratefully. Earth Alliance. We have reached the borders of Orb, sir, said the captain as he turned to look at Azrael, who was sitting in a chair with a smug grin on his face. Perfect. Have we received a reply from them yet? Asked Azrael before taking a sip of wine from the glass in his hand. Yes, sir, it seems they refused to meet our requests by saying that they are neutral and will not join either side, replied the captain as he read the message they received. Ha ha, I must hand it to Lord Izumi. He sure is a stubborn man, but I am glad because I wanted to get a chance to see what our newest weapon could truly do in battle. Begin our attack on them, Captain, and let's see if their foolish ideals can stand up against our power, chuckled Azrael. Yes, sir, saluted the captain before ordering all ships in their fleet to start their attack upon Orb. Naruto. Naruto sat in the cockpit of Wing Zero with his eyes closed and only the light sounds of his breathing could be heard. He knew the battle had started as his advanced hearing could pick up the many sounds of battle outside, but he calmly remained sitting in the dark. The immortal man had lived so long that the sounds of battle no longer fazed him in any way. In fact, what is worse was that the sounds seemed to comfort him, as they were one of the few things that had remained constant in his long life. What a dreadful thing to be able to feel most comfortable when humanity was engaged in a life or death struggle. Captain Uzumaki, you are cleared to launch, said a tech over the intercom, causing the man's eyes to open slowly as his machine came to life. The darkness that he enjoyed so much started to slowly disappear as light slowly bled into his cockpit and showed him the massive battle that was occurring. Wing Zero launching, said Naruto as he launched off the panel before transforming in mid-air into his mobile armor mode. He then took off at high speeds towards the front line of the battle. The Archangel was on the front lines along with the rest of Orb fleet, while the Freedom and Strike helped take out the enemies on the mainland. Fire the main cannons, ordered Captain Ramius as she kept her eyes on the battle and tried to keep her crew alive. Captain, I just got reading of 4 high-powered plasma blasts heading towards, said Sai with a hint of fear. Evade, yelled Captain Ramius just in time. A plasma blast passed right through the space they were right in, but the 3 small ships near them weren't so lucky and were completely destroyed. What the hell could have done that? Gasped Maru with wide eyes before they hardened, as she needed to stay focused as the battle was still going on. Ma'am, we have unknown entity approaching, but it seems to give off the same reading as a mobile armor, said Mirialia before bringing up the picture on the screen. Captain Ramius's eyes narrowed as she looked at the mobile armor, but soon ordered for evasive measures as it started to fire upon them. Several of the shots came real close to hitting the ship and caused the crew to grip their chairs as the ship shook from the explosions. No way, it is a mobile suit, yelled Sai as he watched it transform and took aim directly at the bridge. The crew's eyes widened in shock as it raised its shield and fired at them, but they sighed in relief when Freedom appeared in front of them and deflected the blast using its shield. I will deal with this new mobile suit, so you all focus on those carriers, announced Kira before engaging the new mobile suit. Zero versus Freedom. The Freedom used the 2 plasma cannons mounted on its shoulders and the rail cannons on its hips to fire at the new mobile suit, but it dodged the blasts before they could hit. Kira was then forced to dodge several shots that came at him from the unknown mobile suit. Had to watch that rifle that is hidden under his shield, thought Kira as he used his beam rifle to fire upon Zero. Wing Zero used its shield to easily deflect the beams before using its right hand to draw the beam saber mounted in its left wing structure. Freedom, seeing his enemy draw a beam saber, drew his own, and both Gundams engaged in a fierce close combat fight. Impressive, thought Naruto as they crossed blades and the two fought for dominance. The plasma cannons mounted on Freedom's wings came up and started to take aim at Zero, but sensing the danger, Naruto increased his thrust and pushed the Freedom away before raising its shields to block the blasts. Freedom used that moment of distraction to get in close and make a move to remove Zero's left arm. Zero turned its head and started to fire at the Freedom using the guns mounted on each side of its head, forcing the Freedom off course when it dodged the shots. Naruto then started to fire a few shots at the Freedom, but it used its own shield to block them before returning fire with its beam rifle. The two Gundams fired shots at each other as they circled one another before Zero came in close at incredible speeds. Fast, cursed Kira as he barely raised his shield in time to block the beam saber, but that seemed to be exactly what Naruto wanted as he slammed his shield into Freedom's head. Zero was about to end the match, but was forced to raise its shield in defense when the rail cannons on Freedom's hips opened fire upon it. This gave Freedom enough time to recover and charge right at Zero, ready to take off its shield arm. Zero blocked the strike with its shield, but that was exactly what Kira wanted as he prepared to fire its plasma cannons at point blank. Naruto was impressed the boy had used his own tactic against him, but wasn't about to die that easily, and finally used the machine guns hidden in the shoulders of Zero. Kira's eyes widened in shock and barely managed to disengage in time before both his plasma cannons were taken out. "Time to finish this," said Naruto as he gave Kira no time to catch his balance and tossed away his beam saber before taking his buster rifle out of the shield and firing two shots at Freedom. The Freedom turned its thrusters to max and the shots sailed right under it as its plasma and rail cannons were about to take aim. Like when Naruto faced the Forbidden, the pilot didn't know his rifle could split in two and was unprepared for the third shot that came from the shield. Kira's eyes widened in horror as he saw the plasma blast heading straight for him and knew he wouldn't be able to dodge in time. Someone must like him though, because a red mobile suit appeared in front of him and deflected the blast with its own shield. Naruto's eyes narrowed as he eyed the new Gundam that had showed up as he floated in front of both of them in his Wing Zero. This new Gundam looked to be especially built for close combat as Naruto saw multiple beam saber handles. "Thanks," said Kira, but was surprised when a familiar face appeared on his screen. "I am here to help you," said the boy as Kira's eyes widened in shock. "Athron?" gasped Kira as he stared at his childhood friend. "We need to talk, but not right now. Right now we have more important matters to deal with," said Athron as he was referring to the mobile suit that flying directly in front of them. "Right," agreed Kira as his eyes hardened as he prepared to fight next to Athron to take out this new mobile suit that was able to match the abilities of his own. The Justice and Freedom dodged to the side as Zero started to fire upon them both using both halves of its buster rifle to do so. Athron quickly drew his twin beam sabers and connected them to form one large beam before charging at Naruto. Zero dodged the Justice's strike, but that seemed to be their plan as he came under direct fire from the Freedom's plasma and rail cannons. Naruto managed to raise his shield just in time, but lost the right half of his buster rifle in the Freedom's blasts. He quickly jettisoned the second beam saber from the right wing mount and caught it firmly his right hand before activating it in time to parry the Justice's blow. "These two seem to work well together," muttered Naruto as he was completely on the defensive for the past 2 minutes. The only thing that was saving his life was his lightning-fast reflexes and Zero's incredible speed. He couldn't keep this up for much longer or he would be destroyed. Luckily, the Earth Alliance signaled a retreat, which caused the Justice and Freedom to stop their assault on him. "We'll meet again," thought Naruto before transforming into his mobile armor and taking off back to his ship. Athron and Kira just watched him go with looks of apprehension in their eyes because that man had just fought against them both and managed to hold his own. Anyone who could fight against their two Gundams at once without any help was something to watch out for in the future. "Break. I can't believe you spent the entire battling fighting some unknown mobile suit," yelled Azrael unhappily. It was no ordinary mobile suit. It was able to keep up with Zero with little difficulty and had incredible firepower at its disposal. "There was also a second suit that showed up that was almost able to match my own suit in speed," said Naruto, not in the least bit intimidated by the man. Interesting, to think that there are two suits out there able to keep up with your mobile suit is nothing short of amazing. I wonder if it was Orb who built them or someone else, muttered Azrael thoughtfully. Captain Uzumaki, the repairs to your Gundam will be done shortly, saluted a tech before Naruto dismissed him with a nod of his head. I want you to capture one of these new mobile suits, but it doesn't matter which one. If you can't, then destroy them, but make sure you don't completely destroy them so we have something to salvage, grinned Azrael before leaving the hangar. Orb, Kira and Athrun were sitting next to each other as they had just finished talking with one another and had finally reconciled about everything that had happened between them. Even though the two were now friends again, they didn't seem too happy because they each had a solemn look on their face even after Kigali had hugged them when they had finally made up. Why the long faces? One would think you would be happy now that you have settled everything between you two, said Mew with a smirk. In the battle today, we faced a new Earth Alliance mobile suit and whoever was piloting it was extremely good, said Kira with a slight frown. He was able to hold us both off without taking any real damage, said Athrun, causing Mew to raise his eyebrow because he knew how good the two kids were. If I were you, I would take this time to rest since the Earth forces are still out there and will probably attack again real soon. You will need all the rest you can get if this new mobile suit and pilot are as good as you say, said Mew seriously. Kira and Athrun seemed to relax a bit after hearing that because he was right and they would need all their strength if they met that pilot again. Break. I think it is time to finish this useless nation off, said Azrael with a smirk as the captain looked at him in surprise. Sir, replied the captain, I want you to give the order to attack, and this time I want this stupid nation and its foolish ideals to burn to the ground, ordered Azrael. Yes sir, said the captain before relaying the orders. The Earth forces was again started to deploy their weapons against the nation of Orb. They didn't even try to negotiate with them even though Orb had been sending them constant messages, which Azrael didn't bother to answer. Battle. Where are you two? Thought Naruto as he fired upon two more Orb ships before flying off, not even bothering to watch as they were destroyed. He was just about to head down towards the ground to help push back the Orb forces when he dodged to the side in order to avoid being hit by multiple blasts that came at him from the Freedom. Naruto returned a couple shots at the Freedom before quickly jettisoning the beam saber in the right wing. He caught the beam saber, activated it, and raised it above his head all in one quick motion as he crossed beams with the Justice that had tried to come at him from above. The Zero pulled back and let momentum carry the Justice past him before going to kick him the back, but was caught off guard when Fat Impact that was usually attached to Justice's back hit him right in the stomach. The Freedom appeared on the far right side of Zero and fired all its weapon upon the mobile suit. Naruto, thinking, quickly grabbed the Fat Impact before it got out of the way and used it as a makeshift shield to protect it from the full brunt of Freedom's attack. His plan worked and he quickly threw the pack away from him just as it exploded in a shower of debris. I have no choice, their teamwork has gotten even better, thought Naruto before activating the Zero system, and information instantly started to flood his mind. Come on Kira, said Athrun as he drew his twin beam sabers and charged at Wing Zero with the intent of finishing this fight quickly. Kira just nodded his head before taking aim and firing again at Zero so that if it dodged it would be in the perfect spot for Athrun to engage it. Zero dodged the shots just like Kira and Athrun planned, but just as Justice was about to take off its right arm. But Zero caught Justice's arm in his right hand while its back was to the Justice. Athrun's eyes widened in shock before he groaned in pain as Zero's left elbow slammed into his head and forced him to lose his grip on his beam saber. The Freedom was coming at Zero from the front while it was still holding the Justice's right arm, but barely got out of the way in time as Zero started to fire upon it using the beam rifle in its shield, which was in its left hand. While Freedom was veered off course, Zero lifted its legs before slamming them into Justice's chest and then pushed off the mobile suit at amazing speeds. Kira barely had any time to respond as it moved back just in time to avoid being cut in half, but its shield was caught in the swipe and was cut in half. Zero inclined its head slightly and started to fire right at Freedom's rail cannons, which it managed to destroy the one on the left hip before turning around to block the shots fired at him from the now recovered Justice. Kira, we need to do something or he is going to get by us, panted Athrun as he barely dodged the beam strike from Zero, but wasn't able to dodge the spinning kick to his chest. I know, said Kira as he went down to help Athrun out, But both boys stopped when they received a signal from the Archangel to pull back. They were surprised when they noticed that Zero had stopped attacking them just as they received the signal. A second later, a man with sun-kissed blonde hair and cold blue eyes appeared on their screen. "You allowed me to retreat, so I am returning the favor, but next time we meet I will not stop," said the man before closing the link. Athron and Kira watched in surprise as the Zero transformed into its mobile armor form and went down to help the rest of its forces break through the last line of defense. "Let's go, Athron. This retreat is an order from Lord Azumi himself, so it must be important," said Kira before taking off towards the meeting area. Athron just nodded his head before following his friend. "Break. I can't believe that old fool destroyed the mass driver," yelled Azrael in anger. They had managed to take over Orb, but it was pointless now that the mass driver was gone since that was the main reason for attacking it. "We have been ordered to head over to Victoria and help with the operation to reacquire the mass driver there," said the captain. Very well. I guess it doesn't matter so long as we acquire a mass driver. Besides, we did finally get to destroy this foolish nation and that is good enough for me," shrugged Azrael as he calmed down and smoothed out his expensive suit. "Let us be on our way then, because I wish to get to space as soon as possible so I may acquire one of those spectacular new mobile suits," smirked Azrael. "Yes sir," said the captain before ordering all ships to turn around and make haste to Victoria. Chairman of Plans. "Chairman, it seems the Earth forces were successful in reacquiring Victoria and have launched a large amount of their forces into outer space," said Commander Rao. That is nothing new since we already knew they would probably get Victoria back, but what I want to know is if there has been any word from Athron," said Chairman Zala as he turned to look at Rao. "I am afraid not sir, but you did give him a highly classified mission. He is probably afraid to contact anyone in fear that the transmission will be intercepted," said Rao as he inwardly smirked. Everything was going according to his plan and soon humanity would be judged properly. "I want you to keep an eye out for him and continue to try to contact him, then report back to me immediately." "Is that understood, Commander?" ordered Chairman Zala. "Yes sir, I will contact you immediately if I hear any word from him at all," bowed Rao before leaving the man's office. Victoria. "So this is the new ship that has been built, impressive," said Azrael with that cocky smile of his. Naruto quietly followed besides the general and Azrael as he observed the new ship of the Earth Alliance. It was designed after the Archangel and has many of the same capabilities, and the person assigned to captain of this ship even used to be part of the Archangel before it turned traitor, said the general as they boarded the ship to find several members of the crew waiting for them in a military fashion. A beautiful woman with short purple hair and exotic purple eyes stepped forward and saluted the trio. "Lord Azrael, Captain Uzumaki, I would like to introduce you to Captain Nataro Bagurul," said the general. Nataro was surprised to learn that the leader of Blue Cosmos would be aboard the Dominion, but was in shock to see the legendary ace pilot Uzumaki Naruto in front of her, as was the rest of the crew that was there at the time. "It is an honor to have you both aboard the Dominion," said Nataro as she glanced at Naruto, and noticed him nod his head at her. She swallowed nervously as she saw how cold and lifeless his eyes were, but her attention was diverted when Azrael made some perverted comment. "Wow, is having a beautiful captain an added bonus of being aboard this ship?" smirked Azrael as he checked out Nataro without an ounce of shame. The woman wanted to scowl at him, but knew she would be reprimanded for it, so kept her face neutral. "I assure you, Lord Azrael, that Captain Bagurul comes from a long military line and she is perfectly capable of leading this ship. She knows firsthand all its capabilities since she was part of the Archangel before she was transferred," said the general firmly. "Oh good, because we will be hunting the Archangel," said Azrael to the surprise of Nataro, since she thought the Archangel had been destroyed at the Alaska base. "Sir?" asked Nataro as she turned to look at the general. "Oh, you don't know that the Archangel survived the Alaska base incident? We even had the pleasure of fighting against them when we went to Orb before they managed to escape," smiled Azrael. "If you don't mind, Captain, I would like a tour of this ship after I settle in," said Naruto as he interrupted Azrael and his constant rambling. "Of course, I would be honored to show you around. Would you like a tour as well, Lord Azrael?" replied Nataro. "No, I am fine. I am just going to get a nap after making sure all my effects have been brought aboard," declined Azrael. "I will be ready in an hour for that tour after I am shown to my room," said Naruto. "Yes sir, I will have one of my crew escort you to your room," said Nataro before assigning one of the current crew members to do it. Naruto nodded his head at her before following the person assigned to show him to his room. Break. Not many things could faze Nataro, as she was a no-nonsense woman and did as she was ordered while expecting others to do the same. She could honestly say that no one other than her father had ever intimidated her, but here she was walking next to a man that was a living legend among the Earth forces and she was nervous as can be. It was only supposed to be a simple tour of the ship, but already 10 minutes into the tour, she couldn't stop herself from staring into his eyes, which were as cold as ice. He was so much younger than she would have thought, yet his eyes told a different story. "Am I making you uncomfortable?" asked Naruto as he stopped walking and broke the beautiful woman out of her thoughts. "No, I am sorry, but I just couldn't believe how young you are," blushed Nataro before recomposing herself. "Don't let my looks deceive you, I am older than I look," said Naruto as he gazed into the woman's eyes. She couldn't stop the shiver that went down her spine as those beautiful yet cold blue eyes stared into her own and seemed to be looking into her very soul. "I am sorry if I offended you, I won't let it happen again," said Nataro firmly. "I heard you were once aboard the Archangel," said Naruto as he started a conversation with the woman after walking together for a few moments in silence. He didn't know why he felt this urge to speak, but would worry about it later. "Yes sir," replied Nataro as she looked at him curiously. Before he didn't want to talk at all, but now it seemed to be the exact opposite. "Will you be able to shoot them down?" asked Naruto, causing Nataro to stumble slightly, but not enough for him to take notice. "What do you mean sir?" asked Nataro confused. "If you were truly aboard the Archangel until Alaska, then you must have known the crew and people on it quite well. Will you be able to shoot down the ship carrying a bunch of people you spent several months with?" explained Naruto, causing Nataro's eyes to narrow in thought before replying. "I will do my duty as I am told. You do not need to worry about that sir," said Nataro with a hard look in her eyes. "I see," said Naruto with a hint of disappointment that Nataro managed to pick up. Why did he care if she could shoot down a bunch of traitors even if they were old crew members of hers? He had given up caring a long time ago, so why was this affecting him? Could it be those visions from Wing Zero that now involved his past were actually affecting him? "Forgive me sir, but you seem upset with my answer. Why is that?" said Nataro as she hoped he wouldn't reprimand her. "I am not upset, but merely slightly surprised because I don't think I could do it," answered Naruto. "You don't think you would be able to shoot down a bunch of traitors?" replied Nataro, surprised. "Not if I knew them on a personal level like you do," said Naruto, causing Nataro's eyes to widen before she looked down at the ground. What the hell was he talking about? He had been the one to kill Sasuke, and that was somebody he considered a brother. Why was he starting to care all of a sudden? This was not good because he had stopped getting close to people centuries ago, so he wouldn't have to worry about the pain of losing someone he cared for. "I may know them, but my responsibility to the military comes first before any personal attachments I may have," said Nataro. But Naruto could hear the slight hesitation. A part of her obviously thought otherwise, but he wasn't going to say anything because he had spoken enough. He just nodded his head and gestured for Nataro to continue with the tour as the conversation was over. Outer space. Abandoned colony L4. "Well, looks like we now have 3 ships and 2 of which are stolen, with one wanted by Zaft and the other by the Earth Alliance. We sure do know how to get into tough situations," said Mew with a smirk. "I agree with you there, but what is life without a little excitement?" smirked Andrew Waltfeld as he drank some coffee while sitting down in his chair. "The question is what we do now," said Kira, causing everyone to think about that question. "It is my hope that these 3 ships will be able to end this war and finally bring about peace," said Lacus. That sure is one hell of a goal to accomplish with just 3 ships," chuckled Mew as he leaned against the wall with his arms behind his head. "I would be glad to help you achieve peace, but how do you propose we go about doing it since we aren't very liked by many?" said Maru as she stood next to Mew. "I hate to say it, but so long as my father is chairman I don't think there will ever be peace between the plants and Earth," frowned Athron as Kigali looked up at him with a sad look in her eyes. "Not only that, but no way Lord Azrael will ever agree to a peace treaty with the plants when he wouldn't even negotiate with Orb," said Kigali as her eyes burned unconcealed hate for the man responsible for leading the attack against Orb. "Honestly, I am more worried about that new mobile suit the kid was talking about earlier. I mean, anyone who is able to take out both the freedom and justice is a major threat," said Andrew, which everyone agreed to. It doesn't make any sense, we were clearly winning against him. But then in an instant he was able to take us out without any problems, said Athron confused. I think the pilot of that Gundam may not be as much of a threat as you might believe, since Kira and Athron did say he let them go instead of continuing to fight when he had the upper hand, pointed out Lacus. Any chance you got a good look at the man? Could be useful in the future if we know what he looks like, said Ladonir, Kigali's personal bodyguard. Yeah, he had spiky blonde hair and sky blue eyes, offered Kira, causing Mew to tense, which Maru noticed. Mew? Asked Maru curiously, causing everyone to look at the man. Tell me, when he spoke to you, did he show any emotion at all? Asked Mew as everyone looked at him strangely. No, actually, now that I think about it, his eyes were extremely cold and lifeless, said Athron thoughtfully. This is not good, said Mew as he started to shuffle around nervously. Do you know who he is or not? Demanded Kigali through narrowed eyes. Mew looked around to see everyone looking at him expectantly, which caused him to sigh before answering the girl's question. Yeah, I know him, and so does every other person in the Earth Alliance, said Mew. Why don't you just give us a name instead of dragging this whole thing out, said Andrew as he finished his cup of coffee. His name is Captain Naruto Uzumaki and he is the top ace of Earth Alliance, frowned Mew as his eyes became hard. Maru gasped while Andrew got a grim look on his face, but the others still didn't know who he was. Who is he? Asked Kigali confused. His name sounds familiar, said Athron as he tried to remember where he had heard that name before. Naruto Uzumaki is probably the most dangerous man I have ever faced in battle, including you, kid, said Andrew with a hard look in his eyes. Kira was surprised by that comment because he had almost killed Andrew and did kill his lover, so who could be worse than him? He is responsible for almost all of the Earth Force's victories against Zaft before those new Strike Dagger mobile suits were put into mass production. I have never seen him in action, but I do know that he is the first natural to be able to pilot a mobile suit to the same level and degree as a coordinator, explained Maru. I remember hearing my father speak with several council members concerning someone by the name of Uzumaki. They were very worried about his abilities and how he was one of the few naturals who had successfully taken out multiple GIN units, said Lacus, surprising Kira and Athron. I believe the strike was originally meant to have been made for his use, said Mew. Have you ever fought besides him? Asked Kira curiously. Yeah, once, but the thing was I barely did any fighting, and the same goes for the others who were there as well. I have never seen a mobile armor do the things he could do with it, answered Mew as he remembered that particular battle clearly. I fought against him once as well back in the desert when he used a modified Skygrasper to fight. He took out 3 of my Boo CUEs before sending us a message that he was only passing through and not there to fight, but he would take out anyone else that continued to fire upon him. If I hadn't been there personally and seen what he did, I probably would have thought he was too arrogant for his own good, but he has skill in spades, said Andrew as he got another cup of coffee. He doesn't seem like some cold-hearted bastard if he sent you a message like that, so why does he work with Azrael? Asked Kigali. I would like to know the answer to that question as well, said Lacus with a slight frown on her beautiful face. Well, if I had to give a reason, I would say it is pretty much the same reason that Natarl had for doing things, which was why she always upset. He does it because he is a good soldier and follows the orders he is given, shrugged Mew. He's very suicidal from what I heard and saw firsthand, so he may just have a death wish, said Andrew with a shrug of his own. Dominion. Why do you keep sending me visions of my past? Thought Naruto as his eyes narrowed in anger. He was supposed to be over what happened, but now he wasn't so sure anymore, and it was all because of these damn visions he kept having. They were visions of him when he was happy as he spent time with his friends and teachers. It was something he had took so much time putting behind him because of the pain he felt as he remembered that they had all died just like everyone else he had come to care for. I don't know what you are trying to tell me, but I have accepted I will be forever alone and nothing will change that, thought Naruto as his eyes hardened. His thoughts were interrupted when he sensed someone behind him and turned around to Lieutenant Bagirul, looking at him curiously before saluting him. Lieutenant, greeted Naruto with a nod before turning to look back up at Wing Zero. Natarl smiled slightly before standing next to the stoic man and looking up at the mobile suit with him. You know, even though it causes the deaths of countless lives, the mobile suit does have a certain beauty to it, said Natarl as she looked upon Wing Zero. She usually kept such emotions and comments to herself, but she felt so safe around this man despite his cold nature. There was something about him that let her know he wouldn't think any less of her if she wasn't always following orders. It's ironic, isn't it, that some of the most beautiful things in the world were designed to cause death, replied Naruto. Everyone looked at the ancient buildings and accomplishments of the past with awe and respect, but Naruto never looked at them like that. He knew the true reason behind many of the great structures and how certain accomplishments were made, and the truth wasn't pretty. I suppose you are right, conceded Nataro as she glanced at the man out of the corner of her eyes. I wanted to tell you that we are headed for the abandoned colonies at L4, where Lord Azrael believes the Archangel is located, along with those 2 new mobile suits, said Nataro as she broke the silence. I see, I look forward to fighting besides you when the time comes, said Naruto with a small nod of his head. I am afraid that it will be my extreme honor to fight with you, sir, since you have been in more battles than I have, replied Nataro as she looked up at Naruto. Don't let Azrael dictate what you want to do, because he knows absolutely nothing about being in a real battle, said Naruto as he looked down at Nataro before taking his leave. Nataro just watched him go with a contemplative look on her face. Break. Sir, we have reached the L4 colony and we are getting several large readings from inside the colony. One matches the Archangel, said Nataro as the Dominion floated about half-mile away from the colony. Perfect, now is our opportunity to capture those mobile suits, smiled Azrael as he couldn't wait until they managed to capture one. Ma'am, we have detected several Zaft ships located on the other side of the colony, said a tech, causing Nataro to frown. It seems we have some competition, said Azrael, amused. Nataro just glanced at the man before making a decision. We will ignore them unless they make some move against us, but until then we will focus all our attention on the Archangel, since that is our main objective, ordered Nataro. Oh look, they even saved us some trouble by coming out to us, laughed Azrael as the Archangel came out of the colony. He was greatly surprised though when Nataro opened a link with them and started to ask for their surrender. It was amusing to say the least as the woman tried to convince the traitors to surrender, but ultimately, it proved useless as they sent out those 2 new mobile suits. Have Captain Uzumaki launch immediately and start loading the wombats, ordered Nataro as she was prepared to take out the Archangel since they wouldn't surrender. That was most amusing, but make sure to remind Captain Uzumaki that the goal is to capture one of those mobile suits, so make sure he doesn't destroy them both, said Azrael as he sat there with a smug look on his face. I am sure Captain Uzumaki is well aware of his orders, replied Nataro harshly, causing Azrael to blink in surprise. Justice and freedom versus Wing Zero. Remember Kira, we have to work together, otherwise we might not be able to beat him, said Athron as he watched the Wing Zero approach them. Yeah, agreed Kira as he started to aim at the approaching mobile suit. No matter what, he wouldn't lose a second time to this mobile suit because he would not fail in protecting his friends. Wing Zero was in its mobile armor form as it started to fire upon the Justice and Freedom, but both Gundams got out of the way. Zero transformed into his mobile suit form before splitting its buster rifles and unleashing a barrage of shots at each Gundam that was on either side of it. Justice and Freedom started to return fire upon the Zero, which forced it to reconnect its buster rifle before using its incredible speed to weave in and out of each shot. Damn, he is even better than before, cursed Athron as he sent his Phantom Pack at the Wing Zero just as it dodged the shots fired at it from Kira. He then quickly grabbed his beam boomerang and tossed at the spot he predicted Naruto would go to when he dodged his Phantom Pack. Wing Zero dodged the Phantom Pack just as Athron knew he would, and his beam boomerang was just about to take off its head, but Zero quickly used its shield to knock it off course. Naruto just knocked away the beam boomerang when the Freedom came at him from above, and he barely drew his own beam saber in time to parry the strike, but grunted in pain when he wasn't to block the kick to his chest. The Justice came at him from behind, but the Zero managed to turn just in time to dodge the beam strike that would have taken off its shield arm, though that was exactly what Athron was hoping he would do. The Phantom Pack came speeding out nowhere right at the Zero, but Naruto quickly used the machine guns mounted on his shoulders to destroy the pack before it pierced through the chest of his mobile suit. He was still caught in the explosion, which knocked him backwards as several beeping sounds went off in his cockpit to let him know someone was locking onto him. A second later, several beam shots came at him, but he got out of the way just in time before catching the Justice that was sneaking up behind him off guard by slamming his shield into its face. Naruto then quickly used his beam saber to take off the Justice's left arm, but it managed to move out of the way just in time and only lost its shield in the slice. "We had him," cursed Atheron as Kira's eyes narrowed in anger. He was about to engage the Zero in close combat when he noticed the Archangel was in trouble and quickly went over to help it out by going into full burst mode and taking out multiple missiles that were heading at it from the Dominion. "I will not let you destroy the Archangel," snapped Kira as he went into seed mode. "Is it possible he has a Zero system too?" wondered Naruto as he found himself completely on the defensive by the Freedom as the Justice waited for an opening to help. The Zero managed to parry the beam saber, but before it could try to overpower the Freedom, it was hit at point blank by the blasts of its rail cannons. Naruto groaned in pain as his cockpit started to go on the fritz, but noticed the Freedom was almost on top of him while the Justice provided cover fire that forced Naruto to dodge rapidly. He couldn't win like this, and just like the last time he fought these two, he activated the Zero system. "Kira!" yelled Atheron as he saw his friend just barely dodge a counter beam strike from the Wing Zero, but still lost both plasma cannons on its shoulder. This caused him to snap and go into seed mode. He quickly grabbed his beam boomerang and threw it straight at Wing Zero before charging at it using his twin beam sabers. Naruto was using his machine guns to keep the Freedom at a distance, but was forced to duck suddenly as a familiar-looking beam boomerang passed through the space he's just occupied. Zero quickly did a complete 180 and crossed beams with the Justice, but was overpowered as the Justice powered up its thrusters to full blast to push Naruto off balance and into the beam boomerang that was coming at him from behind. The Freedom was coming from above with its own beam saber ready to disable the Zero once and for all, but Kira's eyes widened in shock when the mobile suit did a backflip in slow motion and watched as it caught the beam boomerang in its right hand. At the peak of its flip, he fired several shots at the Justice with its Buster rifle before twisting his body and using the momentum from his flip to throw the beam boomerang right at the Freedom. Freedom raised its shield to block the attack, but the beam boomerang cut right through it, though Kira released the shield at the last second so he didn't lose his mobile suit's arm too. The Zero was about to power up his Buster rifle to 75, but stopped when he saw the retreat flares from the Dominion. He noticed that the orb ship, Kusanagi, had teamed up with the Archangel and forced the Dominion to retreat as the two enemy warships overpowered it. Naruto quickly transformed into his mobile armor form and headed back to the Dominion. Kira and Atheron just watched the Zero Gundam leave as they both panted heavily as they came down from their seed mode. The Dominion may have been forced to retreat, but both pilots knew they had lost against the Earth Force pilot and were lucky to be alive. "There is no way he is a natural," panted Atheron as he came out of his seed mode. "Yeah, but I get the feeling he isn't a coordinator either," panted Kira as he came out of his seed mode as well. "We have to get back inside the colony and get fixed up because we don't know when we will be needed out here again to face Zaft or the Earth forces again," said Atheron as he headed back towards the colony with Kira following right beside him. "Break. We almost had them until that annoying orb ship showed up. I swear that country is like roaches because just when you think you killed them all more start to show up," sighed Azrael in annoyance. "It wasn't a complete failure since we did manage to damage the Archangel greatly and Captain Uzumaki also managed to deal several decisive blows to those new mobile suits," said Nataro as she was still in awe of his abilities as she looked over the tapes of his battle against the Justice and Freedom. She had only ever seen Kira fight with such skill before, and it was just plain incredible that a natural was able to match the abilities of a coordinator. "I suppose so, but I do expect better results next time, and it better be soon before Zaft decides to stop sitting around and make its move," warned Azrael. "I was impressed with your abilities out there, Lieutenant. It seems that someone made a wise decision in assigning you to this ship," said Naruto as he entered the bridge, and the crew instantly stood up and saluted him, including Nataro. The man just nodded his head before telling them to return to their stations. "Thank you, sir," said Nataro as she kept her face neutral, but inwardly she was beaming to be praised by a veteran like him. "Lord Azrael, I do not believe it is possible to capture those two Gundams as you hope for. Their abilities complement each other perfectly even if the pilots don't seem to have much team training because with each battle their coordination gets better," said Naruto as he turned to look at the arrogant man. "Then we will have to find a way to split them up, won't we?" It shouldn't be too hard since you did say their teamwork wasn't that great, so I am sure you could use the zero system to analyze a way to effectively split them up, smirked Azrael. He didn't see the heavy glare Nataro was sending him from the way he was talking down to Naruto like that, but it was doubtful it would have bothered him much even if he did. If you want detailed information on their fighting capabilities, then I can supply you with that information right now since the Zero system has fully analyzed their capabilities. The only thing I wouldn't be able to tell you is what they are using as a power source, said Naruto. That is the key to everything though, isn't it? Because knowing what powers these unique mobile suits is what I truly want to know, smiled Azrael as he rested his head in his hand. Nataro was about to ask him why it mattered so much, but a small glance from Naruto told her to remain silent. I see, then I will see what I can do in learning about what power source those two units are using, said Naruto with a small nod at Nataro before leaving the bridge. Sir, saluted Nataro to Azrael before leaving the bridge to go speak with Naruto. It didn't take her long to catch up with the stoic man and she started to calmly walk next to him. You wish to speak with me, Lieutenant? Said Naruto as he glanced at the woman. Yes, I was curious as to why you take orders from Lord Azrael when you don't fall under his jurisdiction, and it is clear you don't care too much for him, said Nataro with a slight frown because she knew if she had as much freedom as Naruto she wouldn't let someone like Lord Azrael override her own authority. You don't care much for him either from what I can tell, yet you still do as you're told, replied Naruto. I don't have a choice, he is my superior, but he is not yours, argued Nataro with a slight narrow of her eyes. Naruto stopped walking and turned to face Nataro with a cold look in his eyes that sent a shiver down his spine. Flashback. Why? Cried Naruto as he cradled the hug of a beautiful girl with smooth silky black hair. Her pale eyes stared up at him lovingly before she coughed up some blood, and one could easily tell she was on the verge of death. I wanted to, it was my choice, coughed the girl as life started to fade from her beautiful pale eyes. Hinata-chan, why didn't you just agree to their demands? You didn't have to die, cried Naruto as tears fell down from his eyes in streams. The girl smiled painfully at him as she reached out a hand and wiped away one of his tears, which made him cry harder. I was always told I didn't have a choice, that my destiny was already set for me. I truly believed that until I met you and saw how you constantly fought against such things as fate and destiny. I rather die free than be chained to others my whole life. I love you, Naruto-kun. Please, never give in to fate and stay free, smiled Hinata before giving him one last beautiful smile as she fell into an eternal slumber. No, howled Naruto as his eyes bled red and crimson chakra started to surround his body as hate rolled off him in waves. That night was a night no one would ever forget because it was the day Naruto slaughtered every Hyuga from the main branch, leaving only Hinata's sister, Hanabi, alive. It was the day where he started to lose faith in humanity and his eyes started to lose the light they were so well known for. End flashback. Nataro watched worried as Naruto gripped his head in pain, but backed up when he seemed to recompose himself before looking at her with a strange look in his eyes. Your life is your own, never let anyone else tell you how to live it, muttered Naruto before leaving a confused Nataro behind. What did he mean by that? Thought Nataro as she thought about the words that Naruto had just said to her. Zaft. Damn that boy, he could ruin all my plans, but I won't let him, thought Rao angrily as he flew out of the colony. He had hoped revealing Mew and Kira's true past would have broke the boy, but his plan had failed as Mew had protected him before he could kill him. Captain, said Rao as he opened a link with his ship. Yes, Commander? Replied an older man as he appeared on Rao's screen. I want you to put the girl from the Earth Forces in the escape pod and launch her towards the Earth Forces ship, then I want you to engage the Eternal and its allies, ordered Rao to the confusion of the captain. Sir, started the captain, but stopped when Rao yelled at him angrily. Do not question me and do it now, ordered Rao angrily before closing the link. That girl needed to deliver that disc to the Earth Forces, otherwise his plans for humanity would fail. Battle. The Zaft forces were trying to take down the Kusanagi and Eternal while the Archangel was engaged with the Dominion. They were all at a stalemate at the moment, since the Freedom and Justice were both busy fighting the Wing Zero, so they couldn't really help with the escape of their ships. Kira, we need to help our ships get out of here or we are finished, grunted Athron as he crossed beams with Naruto. Wing Zero was forced to break their stalemate as several blasts passed through the spot it was just in. I know, but if we don't deal with this Gundam first then it will attack the ships, cursed Kira as he dodged several blasts from Zero's own Buster rifle. Justice and Freedom were about to continue their attack when a female's voice came in through one of their links that Kira instantly recognized. Kira, someone help me please. I have a key here that will help end the war, yelled Flay in a panic as her escape pod floated through space. A key to end the war? There is no key to end wars, frowned Naruto, but before he could re-engage the Justice and Freedom, Azrael appeared on his screen. Captain, I want you to recover that pod and bring it to the ship right away. Consider this a direct order to finally destroy those 2 new mobile suits so long as you get me whoever is in that pod, smirked Azrael before closing the link. Naruto's eyes just narrowed before he activated the Zero system as he saw the Freedom was headed towards the pod as well. Kira, yelled Athron as he saw his friend speed towards the spot, but didn't get a chance to help him when Zero used his moment of distraction to cut off his left arm and kick him away into the distance. Kira heard his friend's scream of pain and turned around to see the Zero heading straight for him after having taken care of the Justice. Kira was still so worried about Flay that his movements were sloppy and Zero ducked under his beam strike before taking off his right hand in one clean swipe. The Freedom was like a sitting duck as Zero raised its shield arm and fired a shot at point-blank range that took off Freedom's head. "Ah!" screamed Kira as his cockpit went haywire while the Zero sped off and picked up Flay's escape pod. His eyes widened in horror as he realized the Zero was heading back to the Dominion with the pod and was about to give chase, but was restrained by the Justice's good arm. "No Kira, we are in no condition to give chase," yelled Athron as he held his hysterical friend back. Kira just started to scream in anger before slamming his hands down as tears brimmed his eyes. He had once again failed to protect a friend and now she was in the hands of the enemy. The Eternal and Kusanagi had managed to break through the Zaft forces by destroying their main ship. The Dominion had pulled back once Naruto had returned the escape pod to the ship, so the Archangel soon followed its fellow ships off into space. There was only one person truly happy with the outcome of this battle, and that was Commander Rao, as he knew now nothing could stop his plans for humanity. Everything would come to an end soon now that the Earth forces had captured the girl. Lunar base. Look at this. This is proof that those damn coordinators have breached the treaty not to use nuclear technology, smiled Azrael as he showed them the date on the file he had taken off the girl Flay. That foolish girl had truly given him the key to end this war, because with this data on Enjammers he would finally be able to convince these foolish people to use nukes against the plants. We could use this technology to fix the nuclear problem on the planet while at the same time gathering more resentment towards Zaft, said a general, causing Azrael to grit his teeth in anger. It was true that ever since Zaft launched millions of those Enjammers into the Earth's surface, radio problems as long as many other problems had occurred with the economy. This technology could fix all that, but Azrael could care less about that because he just wanted to nuke the hell out of the coordinators. No, don't you see, we could end this war right now. If we attack them, using nukes right now, they will be totally defenseless and we can crush them in one swift blow. We didn't build all those nukes so that they could sit there and gather dust, so let's use them already, growled Azrael angrily as his eyes burned with an insane glint in them. Many of the other generals did like the idea of ending this war once and for all, which caused the majority to vote on Azrael's plan. Very well, I will let you come up with the plan on how you plan to finish this war, sighed the president before calling an end to the meeting. Nothing could wipe the large smile off Azrael's face as he would finally get rid of the coordinators once and for all, for their pure and blue world. Break. Naruto was once again standing before his Gundam the Wing Zero as many thoughts crossed his mind. He had been thinking a lot about Nataro Bagirul and the way she reminded him of Hanabi and Hinata. The woman came from a very strict military family, which was easily seen by the way she followed orders to the book, going so far that she ignores her own emotions on things. When he looked into her eyes, he could see the inner turmoil that she suffered on a daily basis, and it pained him for some reason. It was just too eerie how much she reminded him of the Hyuga sisters, and every time he was near her, he felt this urge to protect her. These were emotions he had kept locked up for many centuries so that he wouldn't have to deal with the pain of the past, but ever since getting Wing Zero they had been resurfacing again. He knew he had to stop getting so close to that woman because it would only cause him pain in the long run when she died and he continued to live. If only the pilots of the Justice and Freedom were more experienced, then maybe he would get his wish to finally die. But like all other great warriors he faced, they just didn't have enough experience fighting compared to him. He did respect their abilities though, because they were able to keep up with him even when he had the Zero system activated, but they were too caring of those around them. This allowed them to get distracted during battle, and those distractions had been costing them their fights against him. Ironic, he remembered when he used to care about what happened around him, but now he could care less, or that is what he told himself. I wonder what you all would say if you saw me now? Would you be disappointed with me, and could you forgive me for what I have become? Thought Naruto as he stared up at Wing Zero as if it held the answers he sought. His thoughts were interrupted when he sensed someone was spying and glanced over to the corner of the hangar to see a familiar girl watching him from behind one of the pillars. He recognized the girl as the one that was in the escape pod and provided Azrael with that file, which contained complete data on the Justice and Freedom. Her name was Flay if you remember correctly, and it was almost amusing that she thought she could remain hidden with that blinding reddish-pink hair of hers. It almost reminded him of when he used to love to wear the color orange when he was younger, but he quickly wiped those thoughts from his mind. The girl wasn't doing any harm, so he decided to just ignore her and return to looking up at his Gundam. Elsewhere. So the meteor system is finally complete, is it? Said Andrew as he sipped his coffee. Yeah, but it does us little good since we won't exactly be able to use it while we are still hiding, sighed Athron as he crossed his arms across his chest. Do we know what the Earth forces and Zaft have been up to lately? Asked Kira curiously. No, all we know that is Earth has been gathering almost 75 of their remaining forces to their lunar base, replied Andrew as he leaned back in his chair. I wonder what they are planning, said Kigali with a small frown. If you ask me, I would say they are planning for a direct attack on the plants, but even they won't be able to accomplish that unless they have some way to get past Zaft defensive base, offered Mew, causing many to think about what he said. Let us hope that whatever they have planned that we will be able to interfere before it creates more death and destruction, said Lacus softly. Kira just smiled slightly before putting a hand on the beautiful pink-haired girl's shoulders to show he agreed with her. Dominion. Nataro was up late as usual going over some data log as she sat in her chair on the bridge of the Dominion. She had been told that she would be leading an assault on Zaft's space fortress Boaz. It had surprised her greatly when she had learned of this, and not because she would be leading the assault, but because they were attacking Boaz. That base had yet to be damaged severely in any Earth Force assault, and Nataro seriously doubted that they would have any better success. They just didn't have the manpower to lead a successful assault against Boaz, which is why it was called a space fortress. You are up late, said a familiar voice that caused Nataro to jump in surprise. She turned around to see Naruto had entered the bridge and floated over to her as she tried to calm down her nerves. Forgive me, I didn't mean to surprise you, said Naruto sincerely. Nataro just waved it off before she saluted the man, since he did still technically outrank her. It is no problem, sir, I was just going over some possible scenarios for when we reach Boaz in a few days, replied Nataro before clearing her monitor. I take it you don't know then? Said Naruto, causing the woman to look at him curiously. I am afraid I do not know what you are talking about, sir, said Nataro as she looked up into his piercing blue eyes. Lord Azrael has convinced the Earth Alliance forces to authorize the use of nukes using the new N-jammer technology Zaft has created. He has also convinced them to allow me to use the full power of Wing Zero in order to take out the base at Boaz so they can use every nuke against the plants, said Naruto. Nataro's eyes widened in horror as she could tell Naruto was being dead serious. It wasn't like her to question her superiors, but was it really necessary to go this far and use nukes against civilians just to win a war? Wait a minute, you said you were allowed to use your Gundam's full power? What exactly do you mean by that? Asked Nataro as she tried to keep her mind off the nukes for a moment. The Calamity and Raider will be deployed to clear the way of all enemy mobile suits so that I can use the full power of Zero's Buster Rifle to completely destroy Boaz. In 2 days, Boaz will cease to exist, said Naruto as he refused to meet the woman's eyes before taking his leave of the bridge. Hopefully, when she saw him destroy Boaz, she would start to hate him instead of still respecting him like she did now. Maybe then, it would be easier to ignore her presence if she wanted nothing to do with him. Break. Now remember, it will be up to you two to clear the way so that Captain Uzumaki can destroy Boaz, and if there is anything left, several mobile armors packed with nukes can destroy what is left, smiled Azrael. Clotho and Orga both seemed happy that they would get to destroy more Zaft soldiers, but were both glaring at Naruto with hate from out of the corner of their eyes. He was the one who had killed Shani, and though none of them really got along, he was still their teammate. Naruto didn't even bother acknowledging they existed, which caused them even more anger, but knew better than to attack the man because then they would be denied the drugs that kept them from feeling any painful side effects of their unnatural enhancements. Captain Uzumaki, I expect that you won't have any problems with testing out the true power of that Buster rifle now, will you? Smiled Azrael before taking a step back reflexively as Naruto's cold eyes turned to look in his own. Naruto didn't say anything, but just nodded his head before taking his leave of the man. This caused Azrael to glare at Naruto because he still hated how the man showed him no respect. It didn't matter though, because once they had finally got rid of those damn coordinators, he would then deal with Captain Uzumaki, or that is what he thought. Go get ready, we have a base to destroy, laughed Azrael before heading towards the bridge. Clotho and Orga just smirked before heading to their own mobile suits. Council of Zaft, Plants. Chairman, Boaz has reported that a large number of Earth forces have headed towards them, said a soldier. Those foolish naturals and their damn arrogance to think that their superior numbers will overcome us, scowled Chairman Zala as he pulled up the screen and watched as Boaz deployed its own forces. It seems they are using some new type of mobile suits, said Izalia Jewel, mother of Isaac Jewel, the pilot of the dual Gundam. It doesn't matter, Boaz is a fortress and will not fall to those inferior naturals, said Chairman Zala confidently. Battle of Boaz. These coordinators are pathetic, and I was hoping for a challenge, laughed Orga as he used his cannons to take out multiple Zaft mobile suits. This is too easy, smiled Clotho as he used his mace to take out 2 enemy mobile suits before using his beam rifle to shoot down another 3. The only one who wasn't bragging about their abilities or taking joy in killing a bunch of Zaft forces was Naruto. He had taken out the same if not more mobile suits than both the Raider and Calamity, but knew his real job had yet to come. It was almost disgusting to think about because he would be annihilating an entire base in one shot. This is what made him realize that he truly had become nothing more than a monster, and yet he couldn't seem to care. There was a small clench of his heart, but for the most part, he felt nothing. He only hoped that after he did this that Zaft would hate him so much they would send everything they had after him and not stop until they succeeded in killing him for what he was going to do. In the big picture, it didn't matter whether he fired the shot or not, because if he didn't fire then Azrael would just launch the nukes against the base. With that final thought, Naruto grabbed his Buster rifle with both hands and took aim at the space fortress. The Zaft, Earth forces, and the 3 ships that had created an alliance all watched with mixed reactions as Wing Zero fired at Boaz. The beam from his Buster rifle passed right through the center of the large space fortress before it started to explode from the inside out. Naruto just watched emotionlessly as Boaz exploded in a shower of debris and didn't even realize that the armor on Wing Zero had started to take on a reddish tint. Boaz had been completely destroyed and hundreds of soldiers of Zaft had lost their life all because of one machine. Naruto's wish was granted, because once news got out that he had destroyed Boaz in a single shot, he had become the most hated man in all of the plants and Zaft. They would not be satisfied until he and Wing Zero were destroyed, then burned in hell for what they did. 3-ship alliance, Kusanagi, Eternal, and Archangel. It can't be possible, there is no way one mobile suit can be that powerful, said Kigali in disbelief, as she still couldn't believe at what happened to Boaz. That isn't the only thing we have to worry about, because we just intercepted a message from Zaft saying that they also detected nuclear energy aboard all of the carriers. This means even if Naruto hadn't destroyed Boaz that they would have just launched nukes instead, said Andrew with a grim expression on his face. We need to head to the plants because no doubt that is where they will head to next now that Boaz is gone, frowned Lacus with a worried look in her eyes because she had hoped something like this wouldn't happen. Athron and I will deal with the nukes before we go after that mobile suit, said Kira with a hard look in his eyes. Kira, said Lacus with a worried look in her eyes because she didn't want to see Kira go up against such an enemy for fear of him losing his life. Don't worry Lacus, this time we will definitely end this war. smiled Kira as he looked at the beautiful girl with a reassuring look in his eyes. Break. Does this change mean that I truly am becoming nothing but a monster? Are you starting to give up on me already, Wing Zero? Thought Naruto as he stared at Wing Zero and noticed some of the armor had turned crimson red. He could still remember the last vision he had received, which were the cries of hundreds of people just before they were silenced forever. The vision was the sounds of Boaz just before it exploded, and deep down it was tearing him apart even if he kept a neutral expression on his face. It had taken 2,000 years, but finally he was becoming what the villagers had called him since he was a little kid. A demon that merely existed to take the lives of all those in its path and leave no survivors. Naruto had truly become a fallen angel, and he was losing what little remained of his wings if the slow transformation of his Gundam was any sign. Captain Uzumaki, said a familiar voice, causing Naruto to turn around and stare into the beautiful violet eyes of Lieutenant Bagirul. Lieutenant, is there something I can do for you? Asked Naruto as he turned to face the woman who now looked at him differently since he destroyed Boaz. I have come to tell you that we will be arriving at the plants soon, sir, answered Natarl as she forced herself to look into his eyes. She still couldn't believe that his Gundam contained such power and that he willingly used it to destroy an entire space fortress in one attack. It made her start to question if she was truly doing the right thing by following orders without questioning the morality of them. I take it Lord Azrael wishes to finally finish this war by launching nukes at the plants, said Naruto knowingly. Yes sir, but he has also said that you will be leading the strike, sir, replied Natarl as she glanced at the ground. No, said Naruto, causing Natarl to look up at him in surprise. What did he mean by no? Sir? Asked Natarl, confused. Tell Lord Azrael that destroying a military base is one thing, but I will not use Wing Zero's power on defenseless civilians whether they are coordinators or not. I have not fallen that far, said Naruto as he mumbled the last part before turning to look at Wing Zero. Natarl's eyes widened in disbelief because she couldn't believe that he would be disregarding a direct order not just from Lord Azrael, but his actual superiors since the president had sanctioned this mission. Maybe he wasn't as cruel as she thought him to be, and her faith in the military started to falter even more so now. If he or any others have a problem with this, then send them directly to me and I will deal with them, said Naruto before brushing past Natarl and making his way out of the hangar. Natarl just watched him go with a confused look in her eyes and many conflicting thoughts in her head. Everything was starting to change, and for once, she was confused if she was doing the right thing. Plants. Chairman Zala, we have detected multiple Earth forces approaching the plants, said a soldier as he saluted the man. It would appear the Earth forces plans to use their nuclear weapons and that new mobile suit to end this war permanently, said Rao as he kept a neutral look on his face, but inside he was grinning insanely. His plan for all humanity to be annihilated was about to come about, and all that was left was for Chairman Zala to activate the Genesis. Those arrogant fools, it is time to activate the Genesis and show them exactly how inferior to us they are, growled Chairman Zala, causing a smile to slowly form on Rao's face. I will deploy all our forces to protect the plants while you prepare the Genesis, said Izalia Jewel before taking her leave of the chairman. I shall get going as well, bowed Rao. Soon, all those inferior naturals will be gone, never to bother us again, said Chairman Zala as he headed to his personal ship where it would take him to Genesis. Dominion. Now listen you two, once the nukes are launched and those coordinators are taken care of, I want you both to destroy that annoying Uzumaki, demanded Azrael as he spoke with Clotho and Orga. The leader of Blue Cosmos was pissed because Naruto had refused to obey his orders and use Wing Zero's power to wipe out the plants. He was going to teach that arrogant captain that no one denied him what he wanted. Orga and Clotho started to smirk because they had been itching for a good fight and had been wanting to kill that man for quite some time. Their arrogance in their own abilities wouldn't allow them to accept anyone could be better at piloting a mobile suit than them, which is why they were happy to get the chance to kill Naruto. It would be the perfect chance to prove they were better than that stoic man who never bothered to acknowledge their existence. Can we use any means necessary to kill him? Asked Orga with a glint in his eyes. Yes, but make sure you do after the nukes are launched, that way no one will notice a single mobile being destroyed because their attention will be focused on the destruction of the plants, smiled Azrael. Sounds good to me, smirked Clotho, as he couldn't wait to have some revenge against the man who had humiliated him and killed Shawnee. The three men were so wrapped up in what they were discussing that they didn't notice that their whole conversation had been overheard. The person quickly headed to the hangar where they knew Captain Uzumaki was at to warn him of the danger he was in. It didn't take the person long to find Naruto as he was staring up at his Gundam like he usually was doing during the day. No one really understood why he spent most of his time staring at his mobile suit, and they probably never would because no one was brave enough to dare interrupt the man. "Captain Uzumaki," said a female voice, causing the said man to turn his head to look at the girl. "Yes, Ms. Ulster," replied Naruto as he stared at the girl through emotionless blue eyes that made the girl shift her feet nervously. "It's Flay, and I heard something that I think you should know," said Flay as she tried to remain calm, but Naruto's eyes made her nervous because it was like he was staring directly into her soul. "What is it?" asked Naruto, though he really didn't care since he doubted it was that important. "I heard that man, the leader of Blue Cosmos, speaking with two pilots, and he was telling them to kill you once they launched the nukes at the plants," said Flay, but was surprised when Naruto didn't even look in the least bit bothered by this knowledge. "I see. Was there anything else?" replied Naruto as he turned to look back up at his Gundam. "Aren't you worried?" argued Flay as she looked at the man in disbelief. "No, but it might be wise to keep this knowledge to yourself since you could be targeted if someone found out you knew what you know," warned Naruto before taking his leave of the girl to prepare for the final battle. Second Battle of Jakin-Do. "Ha ha, die you weak bastards," yelled Clotho as he took out several Gin with a large grin on his face. "Remember the plan, idiot," smirked Orga as he used his plasma cannons to take out multiple Zaft mobile suits. Yeah, I know," replied Clotho as he glanced at their target out of their corner of his eyes. Not too far away from them, Wing Zero was being attacked by a huge amount of Zaft mobile suits, but was easily destroying them all. It seemed they all wanted the chance to take out the man responsible for destroying Boaz, but if only they knew how futile their attempts were. "The duel," thought Naruto before using his shield to block several missiles from the stolen Gundam. "You bastard, you will pay for what you did to Boaz," yelled Izuku as he engaged Wing Zero as his eyes burned with hate. Thought Naruto, unimpressed at the duel's abilities as he easily evaded the shots fired at him from the duel. Izuku was growling in anger because he couldn't believe how fast the mobile suit that he was fighting was, and every time it looked like he had it, it would get out of the way just in time. "Damn it," cursed Izuku as he barely dodged out of the way in time before he was cut in half from a beam saber strike, but couldn't evade the kick to the chest that sent him sailing backwards. Wing Zero took the moment it had to draw its buster rifle and took aim at the two Zaft warships in the distance. Izuku saw what was happening and was about to yell out a warning, but it was too late as he watched Wing Zero fire its buster rifle. The two Zaft ships were completely obliterated. "Bastard, you'll pay for that," growled Izuku, but before he could head toward Wing Zero his eyes widened in horror as he saw multiple nukes being launched at the plants. "No, everyone follow me and target those missiles. We can't even let one hit the plants," yelled Izuku in a panic as he directed the Zaft forces over to the nukes that had been launched at the plants. He and many others tried their best to take them out, but there was just too many. "Now Orga," yelled Clotho as he turned around to go after the Zero Gundam, but both pilots blinked in confusion when they couldn't find it. "Where the hell did it go?" growled Orga. His question was answered a second later. A loud beeping sound went off, and both pilots turned around to see Wing Zero about 20 feet behind them with its buster rifle pointed right at them. Their eyes widened in horror as Zero fired at them. "Ah!" screamed Orga while Clotho was completely obliterated in the blast to the point there was nothing left of his Gundam. The Calamity managed to escape death, but its right arm was gone and its thrusters had been damaged. "Surrender or you will suffer the same fate as your friend," said Naruto as he opened a link with the Calamity after putting away his buster rifle. "You bastard, I will kill you," yelled Orga as his eyes burned in rage before he started to fire upon the Zero recklessly. Naruto just shook his head at the insane pilot as he easily weaved in and out of his shots as he slowly closed the distance between the two of them. The Calamity was just too heavily loaded with artillery that it couldn't keep up with Zero's superior speed and maneuverability. In a matter of moments, Naruto was right in front of the Calamity and Orga didn't even get the chance to scream as a beam saber cut his Gundam in half. To an outside viewer, it looked as if Wing Zero hadn't even moved its arm as it passed right by the Calamity in a blur. Wing Zero had its back turned to the Calamity as the Gundam slowly fell in half before exploding in a large explosion. Naruto didn't even bother to look back at the Calamity and went to see how the nuclear strike went. He noticed that all the plants were still there, which confused him because there is no way Zaft could have stopped all those nukes on their own. It was something he didn't get to think too long on when a beeping sound went off and he barely dodged out of the way in time to avoid being cut in half by the largest beam sword he had ever seen. The Justice, thought Naruto as he turned to face his new opponent and noticed that it had some strange pack on its back. His eyes widened in realization as it must have been with these new packs that the Freedom and Justice were capable of destroying all the nukes. Perhaps, now they had the power to beat him and give him the eternal darkness he sought so much. Athron quickly used the meteor to lock in on Naruto before firing a huge amount of missiles at him. Naruto quickly activated his Zero system and turned his thrusters on at full blasts as he attempted to avoid all the missiles. There were just too many though, and he took several direct hits, but nothing that would slow him down for long. Wing Zero's armor was tougher than any other Gundam, which meant it could take considerably more damage without its capabilities suffering from it. His Gundam's armor is incredible if it could withstand several direct hits like that, cursed Athron as he activated the beam sabers on the meteor and tried to take out the Zero with them. Your power is truly impressive with that pack on, but what good is all that power if you can't hit anything with it, said Naruto with disappointment clearly in his eyes. The meteor was designed for taking out multiple enemies and increasing the speed at which the Justice or Freedom could travel long distance, but in close combat, it was merely a burden as Athron was learning. The best he was able to do was keep Naruto at a distance with his beam sabers, but he was nowhere close to landing a blow on him. It wouldn't be long before the Zero Gundam got within his guard and Athron knew it. Naruto and Athron were about to clash again, when a loud beeping sound filled their cockpits and Isaac came yelling at the Justice over the international frequency. "Freedom, Justice, get out of there now. They are going to fire the Genesis," yelled Isaac as he ordered all Zaft forces to pull back. Less than a few seconds later, a large blast came from about a mile or so away from them and was heading straight for them and the Earth forces behind the Zero. Athron's eyes widened in horror as he realized he wouldn't be able to maneuver out of the way in time and would be annihilated in the blast. He gasped in shock and disbelief when he felt something quickly destroy the meteor pack before grabbing him and carrying him safely out of the blast seconds before it consumed him. "Why?" gasped Athron as he looked upon Wing Zero, which was responsible for saving his life. He watched as Wing Zero released him then calmly floated in front of him. The two Gundams stood staring at each other before Wing Zero flew off in the distance to check on its forces. "Athron, we need to destroy that weapon before it can be fired again," said Kira as he appeared on his friend's monitor. Athron snapped out of his stupor and looked down at his friend. "I'll do it, you just continue to fight out here while I take care of that thing," replied Athron as his eyes narrowed. He knew it was his father that had fired that monstrous weapon and he was going to be the one to stop it. "Right," agreed Kira before closing the link. Athron glanced one more time in the direction of which the Zero Gundam took off before heading off towards Genesis. Naruto was heading back to the Dominion because it was clear that the Earth forces were going to lose this battle and war if they didn't retreat. He still didn't know why he had saved the Justice from being destroyed. Something about the way the Justice and Freedom fought seemed so familiar that he couldn't just let them be destroyed so carelessly. They, like him, deserved to die in a battle like a true warrior, and not by some random blast. His thoughts were interrupted though when the Zero system alerted him to several approaching enemies, which caused Naruto to quickly raise his shield to block a blast coming from a familiar-looking Dragoon system. Seconds later, several Dragoons surrounded him and started to fire upon him with deadly accuracy, but he was able to predict their patterns and destroyed two of them before they flew towards a Gundam he had never seen. "Impressive, it seems you are truly as good as they say, but I can't allow your existence to remain anymore," smirked Rao as the Dragoons attached to the pack on the back of his Providence Gundam. "I have heard of you as well, Commander Rao Le Crescent," said Naruto calmly as he floated in front of the Gundam. "Ha ha, then you knows that I will not fail in killing you and that damn boy in order to ensure my plans for humanity succeed," laughed Rao as he fired his beam rifle along with the 5 Dragoons on his back at Naruto. Wing Zero turned its thrusters onto full blast and dodged to the side to avoid being hit before returning fire with its own buster rifle. The Providence Gundam quickly evaded the blasts and released its dragoons that started to attack Naruto to keep him on the defensive. thought Naruto as he weaved in and out of the dragoons that were giving him no time to return fire. If weren't for the fact that he had the Zero system activated and his own superb spatial awareness skills, he probably would have lost an arm or leg by now because of the onslaught. This Providence Gundam was in a league of its own, especially with a pilot like Rao in command of it. "Give it up, there is no way you can match my Gundam's power," laughed Rao as he took aim upon Naruto with his beam rifle. "We shall see," replied Naruto as his eyes narrowed as he came up with a plan to destroy the dragoons. But right before he could implement it, he received a vision from Wing Zero that made his eyes widen in horror. "No, not again," pleaded Naruto as he slammed his hands into the console while his Gundam shook from being hit by several beams. He had just been sent a vision of Lieutenant Bagruel being killed by Lord Azrael because she refused to fire upon the Archangel. She died with a smile on her face, just like Hinata, because she finally chose to make her own decisions and not do as others tell her. "Goodbye," grinned Rao as he had all his dragoons returned to him as he prepared to destroy Wing Zero in one final blast. Just as he was about to fire upon the immobile Gundam, a bright light exploded from the Gundam and temporarily blinded him. When he was finally able to see again, he noticed that Wing Zero was nowhere in sight. He cursed, but decided to go after the freedom, and then after he had dealt with that boy he would find Wing Zero and make sure it couldn't escape him a second time. "Is there anything I can get you, sir? Is there anything I can get you, sir?" asked Missy as she approached a man at the counter with spiky blonde hair and beautiful sky-blue eyes. The man was absolutely gorgeous in her opinion, and she would have wasted some of her time flirting with him if it weren't for the fact that he scared the hell out of her. No one really knew anything about the man except that he had shown up about 2 months ago and since then stayed at a local motel. He came in every morning for a mug of coffee and would drink it slowly while staring up at the ceiling with a blank look in his eyes. It was rather creepy, which caused most people to avoid him like a plague. But Missy needed the money to pay for her bills, so was forced to see if he wanted anything. "I'll have some coffee," answered the man as he didn't even bother to look at her. "Sure thing," smiled Missy hesitantly before quickly leaving. The man sat there with a blank look in his eyes and waited patiently for his coffee. His eyes betrayed none of his thoughts, and when his coffee was served, he thanked the woman before calmly taking a sip from it. As he was drinking, his ears picked up the sounds of the door opening and closing. A few seconds later, he heard footsteps approaching his table and wasn't long before sat down across from him. He glanced up from his drink and found himself staring into the amused eyes of a handsome man with long flowing black hair wearing some expensive clothes. "I must say, you are a hard man to find, but I should have expected you would be in some desolate place like Canada," chuckled the man before signaling the waitress that he would like some coffee. "Why are you here?" asked the blonde-haired man as he put his coffee down gently. "I take you know who I am then, since you haven't assumed I am here to kill you," smiled the man. "You are the current chairman of the Plants and Zaft, Gilbert Durandal," replied the blonde-haired, not in the least bit impressed. They both stopped talking when the waitress came by the table and poured Durandal some coffee. Once she left, Durandal calmly took a sip of his coffee and smiled in delight before placing it down in front of him. "Yes, I am, and you are Captain Naruto Uzumaki, pilot of the Gundam known as Wing Zero, and many other titles," said Durandal with a small smirk. Naruto just stared at the man with a blank look in his eyes because he still hadn't answered his previous question. Durandal could see why people were so intimidated by the man, as it was like he was peering into your soul with those eyes, and it was very unnerving. "Anyway, I heard about how the Earth Forces has been trying to get rid of you for not turning over your Gundam once the war was over, and I was hoping I could help you with that problem," said Durandal as he took another sip of his coffee. "Offering me sanctuary in the plants when I am hated by the entirety of coordinators for what I did at Boaz. I don't see how that helps me," replied Naruto. "Actually, I was hoping you would consider joining Zaft and then you wouldn't have to worry about such things," corrected Durandal. "You want the power of Wing Zero on your side when the next war comes around," said Naruto knowingly. "I am glad to see I am not the only one who sees that another war is inevitable, and you are correct in a way. Whether Wing Zero fights for Zaft or not doesn't concern me because you are the only one who can pilot it from my intelligence," started Durandal, but paused when Naruto finished. So by me joining Zaft you have guaranteed that Wing Zero won't be used against you, as no one else could pilot it but me, and since I would be on your side it couldn't be used against the plants, finished Naruto as he took a sip of his coffee. Exactly, and I am willing to meet almost any demand to get you to join Zaft to ensure the plant's safety from Wing Zero, said Durandal firmly. Naruto stared at the man with a blank look on his face as he thought about what he was being offered. He already knew the man was hiding things from him, but that was nothing new, so it didn't bother him too much because he could always find out what he was hiding if he wanted to. The Earth forces had betrayed him, and though he didn't like to think about it, he wanted to avenge the death of Nataro Bagurul. It wasn't that he wanted to join Zaft, but merely show the Earth forces what all traitors deserve. I will give you my answer in a week, said Naruto as he left some money on the table, then calmly left. Perfect, thought Durandal with a satisfied smile. Somewhere in northern Canada, Naruto calmly walked on top of the snow as if it were solid ground as he made his way to some unknown destination. It was as cold as can be this evening as the snow fell down from the sky lightly, but Naruto didn't seem to be bothered by it as he wore some casual clothes with no jacket or anything else. He just continued to walk as if it were a warm summer day and showed no signs of slowing down. It wasn't about until 10 minutes later, he stopped walking and raised his head to look up at the large machine in front of him. The mobile suit was half buried in snow as it rested against a large hill, but if looked closely could easily see its blood-red, crimson armor standing out from within the snow. Naruto just stood there standing in front of the demonic-looking mobile suit. 2 months since the war ended and you were born. Now I am being recruited by the chairman of the plants to join Zaft, thought Naruto as he stared up at the Gundam. Tell me, Epion, has my desire to fight increased because of you, or are you merely a representation of what my own selfish choices have turned me into? Thought Naruto. The Gundam just stared back at him through the same lifeless look that he always held on his face. Perhaps this change was inevitable. I guess it doesn't really matter, as another war will be coming soon and together we will fight. Let us hope this time that there is someone out there to give us a challenge, said Naruto as he walked towards the Gundam. His destiny was to live forever and fight in numerous wars, one day seeking an opponent that would be able to beat him. He only hoped that this next war provided him with the challenge he sought so much. Naruto looked out over at the city of Armory 1 and couldn't deny that it truly was a beautiful sight. Naruto looked out over at the city of Armory 1 and couldn't deny that it truly was a beautiful sight. Even though he was in space, he had always enjoyed the natural beauty and smells of nature. It was good to see that even though countless wars had ruined Earth beyond compression, that there were still some people out there willing to recreate the once beautiful atmosphere of Earth. Too bad they weren't doing it down on Earth and merely doing it to make their colonies look beautiful. He didn't get to appreciate the sight any further when the elevator stopped and he turned away from the beautiful sight. Calmly, he made his way past the secretary and entered the temporary office of Chairman Durandal while he stayed at Armory 1. The chairman looked up and smiled when he realized who it was that entered his office. Commander Uzumaki, it is good to see you. I hope the past week here has been to your satisfaction, smiled Chairman Durandal. Naruto was dressed in red and black ZAFR uniform that was customized, designed just for him. On the right collar was a small pin that let all Zaft personnel know that he was a member of Faith. Chairman, you wished to speak with me, said Naruto as he stood in front of the man. Yes, I was hoping you could give me your honest opinion on what you think of the new mobile suits being put into production, said Durandal as gestured for Naruto to have a seat. The Gundams or the new Zaku units? Asked Naruto as he took a seat in one of the comfortable chairs. Durandal smirked at that because if there was one thing about Naruto that he respected, it was his insight. The chairman had no doubt that Naruto could easily find out anything he wanted to, but instead merely did his duty and nothing more. I was hoping you could give me your opinion on the new Gundams put in production, answered Durandal as he leaned back in his chair. They are all powerful mobile suits, but because of how they are built they each have a weakness that I am sure you know all about, replied Naruto. Yes, I am aware that the Gaia, Abyss, and Chaos each have a very exploitable weakness, but I do wonder what you think of the Impulse. I have great hopes for that mobile suit, smiled Durandal with a gleam in his eyes. The Impulse is no different than the Strike except it uses a different power source. I believe both mobile suits are a liability in battle, said Naruto to the surprise of Durandal. Why do you say that? Asked Durandal curiously. It is a Gundam designed to reach optimum efficiency by being able to change its parts during battle to fit any situation. That is the main problem with it. Those few seconds that it takes to change gear leaves it wide open for an attack that any smart opponent would take advantage of. It would need to work in tangent with some other mobile suits that have some competent pilots to cover it while it changes gear, explained Naruto. I never thought of it like that, and I do see your point, confessed Durandal thoughtfully while Naruto looked at him blankly. Gundam Epion has a weakness in that it has no long-range capabilities, though its incredible speeds and maneuverability do make up for it, said Naruto as he finished evaluation of the Gundams. Yes, I have received several requests from certain factions wishing to study your mobile suit. Not that I can blame them since your Gundam is obviously different from any other Gundam I have seen, said Durandal with a small smile. If you wish to see its capabilities, then prepare a real-life battle simulation in space and I will show what it is capable of. If it is just my own abilities you worry about, then assign me a Zaku and I will use that instead for the simulation, said Naruto. I take it you know about the meeting I had about 2 days ago with several of the members of the board, chuckled Durandal. If they really want me dead that badly, then give them the opportunity. If they should succeed or fail, they won't be able to bother you anymore because you gave them the chance, said Naruto. You could always change your appearance and take on a different name like I first suggested, smiled Durandal. I don't hide from anyone, replied Naruto as his eyes narrowed slightly and Durandal backed off a bit. I understand, I just wish we didn't lose so many fine soldiers, sighed Durandal as he remembered the many assassins Naruto would bring in, but they would always use a poison on themselves before they could be interrogated. I will look for a proper mobile suit while you schedule the battle simulation, said Naruto as he got up and left the office. Durandal watched him go with a contemplative look on his face. Break. It was the middle of the night, and all the lights in the colony were out. At first look, it would seem all was quiet, but to the trained eye, one could vaguely make out a group of men breaking into one of the hangars. Sir, we are in, whispered one of Special Forces men. Good, let's hurry up and destroy this mobile suit, then we will go after that damn natural pilot, replied the leader with a large grin on his face. The others just nodded with a determined look in their eyes as they all snuck into the hangar undetected. It didn't take them long before they were all standing in front of a demonic-looking Gundam. They stared up at it in anger because they knew who piloted it and still couldn't believe the man had been allowed to come anyone near the plants, let alone join Zaft. Get the explosives and set them to go off in 5 minutes, said the leader. All he received was silence, which caused him to front as he turned around and his eyes widened in horror. He started to back up in fear as he stared into the emotionless sky-blue eyes of Commander Uzumaki, and all around him lay the unconscious bodies of the Special Ops members. Surrender, said Naruto as his eyes bored into the man. Damn you, you are nothing but a monster, yelled the leader as he grabbed his machine gun. Just as he pulled the trigger, a large mechanical fist came between him and Naruto, much to his shock. You should have surrendered, said a voice from behind him before he felt a chop to his neck. Thank you, Epion, nodded Naruto as the Gundam's arm returned to its side. He then started to gather up the unconscious Special Ops soldiers. This had to be the 10th or so attack on him or his Gundam since he had arrived at Armory 1. It was kind of sad how the coordinators believed that their enhanced genes would give them an advantage against him. Reminded him of the many clans he had faced in his past who thought they were better due to their own special gifts. Some people would never learn that true strength and power was earned, not given to you at birth. Zaft Council. Chairman Durandal, letting this man join the ranks of Zaft is absolutely ridiculous. I don't know what you were thinking of when you decided to make this decision, but it was highly foolish of you, said one of the generals as his eyes burned in anger. I have to agree with him, he is responsible for the destruction of Boaz, and countless soldiers who fought for Zaft. Don't you think once people start to realize who he is that others will start to question your sanity? Said a woman as she peered over at Durandal. I know it may have seemed I made a completely irrational and hasty decision, but I believe with him on our side we are much safer than if he were to rejoin the Earth forces. You saw what the destructive power he wielded when he was our enemy, so it makes much more sense to have him as an ally, said Durandal calmly. The other council members may not like to admit, but what he said was the absolute truth. The man was a major threat to them during the Blood Valentine War, and they really couldn't afford to have him as enemy again. If it will make you happy, He has agreed to participate in a real-life battle simulation. He is willing to go up some of our best pilots and won't even use his Gundam if it will appease you all. I am sure he will even go so far as to allow the pilots to go for killing blows against him, while he will limit himself to only immobilizing his opponents," smiled Durandal as he knew they would jump at this opportunity. He really had to thank Naruto for the idea because it would get them off his back permanently. "How do we know we can trust him to keep up his end?" asked the general from earlier. "Simple, his mobile suit will have a self-detonation switch attached to it, and should he break any of the rules or turn on us, then you can activate the self-destruct mechanism," replied Durandal simply. "Fine, but I want our best pilots," said the general with a smirk. He planned to pick their best pilots along with the newest models to make sure that this Naruto Uzumaki didn't survive this simulation. "Good, I will have it scheduled a week from now, and I will allow our current ZAF trainees watch the fight so they can learn something about live combat," smiled Durandal as he got and left the room. "I do hope you put on a good show, Naruto. I look forward to what you can do," thought Durandal with a smirk as he headed towards his office. Armory 1. Gundam Epion Hangar. Naruto was sitting in the cockpit of Epion with the Zero system activated as he looked over the many possible mobile suits there were. Unlike with the Earth forces, ZAFT were first to design mobile suits, so they had a much larger selection to choose from. Using the Zero systems, he was able to receive detailed information on each mobile suit in a matter of seconds and had narrowed his choices down to 2 mobile suits. The first one was a Zaku Gunner, ZAKU, that Luna Maria pilots, which excelled in long-range combat and had close combat capabilities. He usually didn't like using guns and weapons such as those, but he had to be realistic. There was no doubt in his mind that he would be facing some of the best pilots they had, and he would need a mobile suit that could fight against multiple opponents. This mobile suit had impressive long-range capabilities, and he could definitely use it to his advantage. The only problem was that it was a fairly new mobile suit and not many were put in production yet. The other mobile suit was the ZGMF-601R Guaiz R that was currently in mass production, but was about to be replaced by the Zaku units. It had 2 rail cannons, one on each hip, along with a beam saber mounted on the left arm. Came with 2 XMMI Gao 2, Picus, 76mm Chus, fire-linked, mounted in head, and a MA MV-05 composite shield. The mobile suit also came with a powerful beam rifle as an optional weapon. There is no denying ZAFT's genius when it comes to designing weapons of mass destruction, thought Naruto as he went over each mobile suit. After going over their capabilities a few more times, he deactivated the Zero system and prepared to go look at these mobile suits personally. There could only be so much learned from study design layouts, which is why Naruto wished to see these mobiles up close. As he walked through Armory 1, he noticed many of the soldiers look at him with respect and awe. They obviously took notice of his uniform and the faith pin, which is why they were giving him such looks. If only they knew who he was, then no doubt they would be trying to kill him instead of looking at him as they did now. It wasn't like he was hiding his identity, and he even introduced himself to people with his real name. The only problem was that even with him giving his real name, people didn't know who he was because no one except for those at the top or the elites knew that he was the pilot of Wing Zero. His identity in the Earth Alliance had always been kept a secret from ZAFT, so they couldn't target him for assassination. Chairman Durandal hoped to keep it this way, but Naruto knew eventually it would get out and the attacks would increase. Who knows, perhaps one of his attackers would succeed and manage to kill him. Not likely, but it was something that Naruto could hope for. "Hey Shin, look, it's one of the new Zaku units that are starting to come out," said a beautiful teenage girl with short purple hair as Naruto entered one of the hangars. "Calm down Luna, we are still trainees, so don't get your hopes up," said a boy with messy black hair and sapphire red eyes. "Both of you need to stop talking before we get in trouble with any military personnel," said a boy with long platinum blonde hair that fell down past his shoulders. "You and Ray are such killjoys. I can't wait until we graduate and are able to get a mobile suit of our own," said Luna with stars in her eyes. "What exactly do you know about this mobile suit unit?" asked a voice from behind the 3. Shin and Ray turned around and their eyes widened in awe as they recognized the uniform. It is known as the Zaku Gunner. It specializes in long-range support by using its Orthro long-range beam cannon to take out enemies and even bases with enough firepower. I believe they also come with a M4M8 beam tomahawk for close-range combat as well, answered Luna excitedly. Luna, whispered Shin, causing the girl to turn around and look at the boy. Her eyes widened in shock as she realized who had asked her the question. Forgive her, sir, she didn't realize who you are, said Rei as he saluted the man along with Shin and Luna. Naruto just shook his head at them, causing them all to relax before he started to speak again. I am impressed with your knowledge since the unit hasn't even reached mass production yet, said Naruto with a small respectful nod. He usually kept to himself, but the girl's knowledge on the Zaku was helpful and impressive for someone who had yet to become an official soldier. The girl would go far if she is as good a pilot as she is knowledgeable on those mobile suits. Thank you, sir, blushed Luna lightly at the praise. Rei took the moment to study the man in front of him and noticed the pin on the left collar of his uniform. The man was a member of Faith, which meant he took direct orders from the chairman, but he couldn't remember ever seeing the man with the chairman, and he spent a great deal of time with the chairman when he was smaller. This piqued his curiosity because now he wanted to know exactly who this man was. Sir, I don't mean to be rude, but are you here to test pilot the gunner Zaku? Asked Luna. Something like that, replied Naruto before brushing past the three and heading towards the Zaku. Did he just brush me off? Said Luna with a cute pout as she was hoping to talk more with the gorgeous commander. How would I know? Shrugged Shin as he and Rei headed away from the hangar. Luna just watched the commander leave before chasing after her friends. Sir, saluted a bunch of mechanics as Naruto came by their station. Is this mobile suit battle ready? Asked Naruto as he stared up at the gunner Zaku. Yes sir, answered the mechanic as he gave Naruto a curious look. Good, set up a battle simulation exercise and feed it to the cockpit. I want to test out exactly what this mobile suit can do, said Naruto as he brushed past the mechanics. Yes sir, said the mechanic as he started to order the others do as the commander told them. Break. So, got any clue why we have been called here? Asked Dirka as he walked next to his old teammate. He was wearing a green Zaft uniform instead of red one since he had been demoted for insubordination. As if I have any idea why they have called us in, scowled Izik as he straightened out his new white uniform that signified his rank as a commander. Well, I heard it had something to do with some type of training exercise, said Dirka, causing Izik to look at him in disbelief. Yeah right, like they would waste our, better yet, my time with something as stupid as some training exercises, replied Izik. He didn't realize how wrong he was as he walked into the chairman's office. You wish to fight, but now is not the time, thought Naruto as he stared up at Epion. All mobile suits were designed for warfare and used to destroy their enemies. A Gundam was a mobile suit that could perform incredible feats in the hands of a proper pilot. In truth, a Gundam was not just a mere weapon, but something far more powerful than any type of nuke or genesis. Nukes and other weapons of mass destruction like it could only be used once or had to take a considerable amount of time to recharge and build. Not a Gundam could recharge quickly and could cause just as much damage if not more so than those weapons. Placed in the hands of an ace pilot, the destruction that could be accomplished with a Gundam is off the scales. Naruto had fought in countless battles and wars, but never had he encountered anything that could match a Gundam in raw power. Ironic, he used to think that the most powerful thing in the world were a bunch of demons with tails of power. No, the demons knew all along who was more powerful, which is why they attacked humans to begin with. Man was definitely the single greatest threat to the world, and unlike with animals, their hunger was never satiated. Their stubbornness knew no bounds and they were willing to sacrificing everything to accomplish some goal. It made him wonder how the world had survived for so long, as it was a miracle to him. Of course, in truth, a Gundam or any other mobile suit were just swords used by men to defeat their opponents. Whoever was better at wielding their respective sword would no doubt be the one to emerge victorious over his enemies. Then again, Naruto had come across many ancient and modern weapons that had minds of their own, which allowed them to affect their user if they didn't have a strong enough will. This was the main reason he spent countless hours with Gundam Epion and in the past, Wing Zero. Naruto didn't know how it happened, but Epion and Wing Zero seemed to have some type of conscience. He didn't know if it was a side effect from his timeless mind and power merging with the Zero system or something else, but it was there. The only difference between the two Gundams was the way they interacted with him. When he used to pilot the Wing Zero, he would always receive visions of his past, mostly dedicated to those he loved, and gave his life numerous times to protect over the course of 1,000 years before he started to let go of his emotions. It was trying to tell him something through those visions, but he never understood what. He doubted he would ever understand it, since he had spent the past 9 centuries locking away his emotions once he had finally given hope on humanity. Still, a part of him desperately wanted to understand the message Wing Zero was trying to send him, and wished for one more chance to speak with the Gundam. The chances of that happening were extremely low, as he now had Epion and Wing Zero was long gone. He had never used Epion in battle since the last war had ended before he got the opportunity, but that didn't mean he didn't know its purpose. Unlike with Wing Zero, Naruto could already feel what the purpose of Epion was and its desire. Epion wanted to fight, plain and simple. The Gundam wanted to enter as many battles as possible where it could fight and die like a true warrior. It didn't care about the past or future, and only wanted to live and die as a warrior. In a way, it fully represented what Naruto believed he lived for. If you truly represent my heart's desire, then why do the visions of Wing Zero still plague me? Thought Naruto as he stared up at Epion. He may have lived for 2,000 years and be able to find out any piece of information he wanted that was on paper, but when it came to his own internal conflicts, the answers would not be obtained so easily, much to his disappointment. Break. I can't believe this. Why would the chairman let that natural join Zaft? Growled Izek as he punched the wall in anger. I don't know, but do we really have the right to judge after all we did in the war? Replied Dirka as he leaned against the far with his arms behind his head. Izek looked down at the ground and clenched his fist as he knew his friend was right, but didn't want to admit. How could he be mad at that natural? He may have been an enemy, but he never attacked any civilian citizens of the plants, which couldn't be said of him. After the war, he was actually charged and indicted for war crimes against civilians. If it wasn't for all he had done for the war while pilot of the duel, he probably wouldn't had just received a slap on the wrist. Still, that natural had destroyed Boaz and hundreds of soldiers lost their lives. I know that, but still, we can't trust him, and I won't hold back on him during the so-called training exercise, argued Izek before stomping out of the room with an angry scowl on his face. I better keep an eye on him in case he does something stupid, muttered Dirka as he followed his friend. Battlefield exercise. Naruto was sitting in the cockpit of the gunner Zaku he would be using and doing a quick checkup to make sure everything was working good. He continued to work even as a monitor opened up on his screen with Chairman Durandal on it. Naruto-san, I take it you are ready? Smiled Durandal kindly as the man continued to run over some data. Where will the battle be located? Asked Naruto as he finished typing something in the council. The carrier will be taking you to the abandoned colonies at L4 so that you are far away from the plants and our facilities. There will be 2 Nazca-class ships in the area to make sure everything goes okay, explained Durandal. There is no self-destruction switch in my mobile suit, so I take it they will shoot me down instead if I break the rules, said Naruto knowingly. Yes, I felt that someone might too tempted to hit the self-destruct button during the fight if you showed signs of winning, so I took it out and went with this option instead, replied Durandal with a small smirk. Responded Naruto as he finished his checkup of the mobile suit and started to power it up. I look forward to seeing what you are capable of, smiled Durandal as he closed the link between them. Naruto didn't even say anything as the visor came down over his eyes and he prepared to launch. Armory 1. Hey Ray, do you know why they called us all down here? Asked Shin as he took a seat next to his friend. Yes, apparently there will be a real-life training exercise going on to test the capabilities of 3 of the new production models, answered Ray, as he looked up at the many large screens that each showed a different angle of the abandoned L4 colonies. Did you two hear? 3 new Zaku units will be tested today, and they are allowing everyone to see so that the chairman can see what everyone's opinion on the new mobile suits are, said Luna excitedly as she took a seat in front of Shin and watched the screen intensely. I didn't know they did things like this, blinked Shin as he looked up at the screen. They don't, but I am sure the chairman has a perfectly good reason, and you have to remember only military personnel are allowed to see the fight, not civilians as well, explained Ray, as his eyes narrowed slightly. Wow, that gunner Zaku looks so cool, squealed Luna as the screen did a close-up on the mobile suit. It was painted in midnight black with the joints painted red, as was the shield on the left arm. In its right arm was a huge beam cannon about the size of the whole mobile suit, which let people know it was packing some serious firepower. "A Blazin/Zaku," said Ray, as two other Zaku-type mobile suits showed up and floated in front of the gunner Zaku. "Wait a minute, is this a 2-on-1 match?" asked Shin confused. "Looks like it," replied Luna, but didn't bother to take her eyes off the screens. L4 colonies. "Remember Isaac, these are just prototypes, so don't kill yourself trying to take him down," smirked Dirka as he opened a link with his friend. "I know that, now shut up and stay out of my way," growled Isaac as he prepared to take aim at the gunner Zaku. But his eyes widened in shock as he realized it was about to fire at them both. Dirka and Isaac both flew out of the way as a large beam passed through the spot both were in. They both turned to take aim at their opponent, but found he was flying away and headed towards the debris of the abandoned colonies. "Trying to hide, are you?" "I don't think so," glared Isaac as he increased his thrust while shooting at his opponent using the Gatling guns on his mobile suit's shoulders. "Really need to work on that anger of yours," sighed Dirka as he started to take aim at their opponent. It was amazing to see how well the gunner Zaku was dodging the shots from Isaac as it held that large cannon in its right hand. "Gotcha," smirked Dirka, but before he could pull the trigger, he cursed as the gunner Zaku disappeared behind the colony. "Damn it, we need to be careful," cursed Isaac as he spoke to Dirka. "He's definitely good, it would probably be best if we stick together since he might be hoping for us to split up and look for him," said Dirka logically. That bastard can't hide forever," muttered Isaac. The Blazin/Zaku started to explore the remains of the abandoned colony as they searched for the gunner Zaku. What they didn't know was that the captains of each Nazca-class ship was trying to open a link with them to tell them where Naruto was hiding, but for some reason it wasn't working. "Chairman, if you thought I was going to let you have the complete advantage, General, then you were sorely mistaken," smiled Durandal as he had some of his most trusted advisors jamming the Nazca-class communication so they couldn't interfere. "Battle aka training exercise. So they sent the former pilot of the duel and some other after me," thought Naruto as he pulled out one of his frag grenades and placed it at a strategic location, before quickly leaving the area. He recognized the duel pilot from the way he fought, but had no idea who the other pilot was. It didn't bother him though because he already had a plan to take them both out. A beeping sound went off in his cockpit and he quickly dodged to the right just in time to avoid being destroyed. He gripped his ortho beam cannon with both hands of his Zaku and fired it at his two opponents, before getting cover behind a large piece of floating debris. "Dirka, you go to the right while I go left," ordered Isaac as he took off before his friend could stop him. "Why do I get the feeling this is going to turn out bad?" said Dirka, but did as his friend wanted. "Now," thought Naruto as he came out from behind the debris and took aim at Isaac. He got off one shot before releasing the cannon just as Dirka filled the spot he was just in with multiple beams. Naruto watched as his beam cannon was destroyed, but it had served its purpose. "Ah!" screamed Isaac, causing Dirka to stop firing at Naruto look over at his friend. His eyes widened in horror as he saw Isaac's suit get blasted back from a blast from within the colony, and now his mobile suit was missing its right arm and the whole right side was in bad condition. His main weapons were damaged as well, so Dirka knew he was out of the fight for the moment. "What the hell?" cursed Dirka as his eyes narrowed in contemplation. He knew there was no way Isaac got hit by that beam, so what had happened? A bomb? No, where could he have got the explosive since the gunner Zaku only comes with several types of grenades besides its main weapons, thought Dirka, but stopped when he realized what had happened. The pilot of the gunner Zaku hit a proximity grenade in the colony, and when Isaac dodged the beam cannon blast, he came too close to the colony and got caught with the grenade. He didn't get to think more on the matter when he picked up two small objects headed right for him and recognized them as more grenade. With incredible speed, Dirka took aim, and fired at the grenades before they got too close. His shots hit the grenades right on, but something unexpected happened. Instead of two small explosions full of flames, he got a large thick smoke that blinded him temporarily. "Damn it, he used the smoke grenades in space, what a crazy bastard," cursed Dirka, but before he could fly out of the cloud of smoke he saw some fast coming right at him. He screamed in pain as something cut off his left arm at the elbow joint, which caused a small explosion that rocked his mobile suit. A beeping sound went off in his cockpit and it showed the gunner Zaku coming straight at him. Dirka cursed angrily because he couldn't fire the missiles from the pack on his pack because it was closing in on him too fast. He noticed that in the gunner's right hand was a beam tomahawk, which must have been what rendered his left arm useless, but they only came with one tomahawk if his memory of the mobile suit was correct. The man must have equipped a second one and planned exactly for this moment. Just when he thought he was done for, a familiar-looking mobile suit appeared in front of him and parried the gunner's tomahawk with a beam axe of his own. "Bastard, I won't be beat so easily," yelled Isaac as he held Naruto off with only one good arm and a severely damaged mobile suit. Impressive, his mobile suit was able to take direct damage from 3 grenades and is still able to maneuver fairly well. These Zaku units of Zaft are definitely better than their previous mobile suits, thought Naruto as he kept close to the Zaku so that the blaze wouldn't use the missiles on its back in fear of hitting its teammate. "You need to pull away so I can fire upon him without you getting caught in the blast," said Dirka as he watched Isaac try to hold the man off. "I know that," grunted Isaac as he parried another strike, but was unprepared for the fist that struck his mobile suit in the head. His cockpit started to haywire and he knew that he couldn't take much more. If he just hadn't let his guard down, he would have never been caught off guard by those damn grenades. "Surrender, this match is over," said Naruto as he appeared on Isaac and Dirka's screen. He was trying to be arrogant, but merely stating the truth. "I don't surrender to anyone, especially not some natural. Now take this, you bastard," glared Isaac as he charged right at Naruto recklessly. "Foolish," thought Naruto as he stopped the attack with his free hand by grabbed the Slash's wrist, then used his tomahawk to take off the Slash's head. He then got behind the Slash and used it as a shield so the blaze couldn't lock onto him. "Your partner is disarmed and defeated, do you surrender?" asked Naruto as he spoke with Dirka, while Isaac hit his counsel in anger at being beat. "Yeah, I give up," sighed Dirka as he opened his cockpit and raised his hands up in the air. Naruto released the Slash and put his tomahawk back inside his shield. Armory 1. Everyone watching the fight was impressed with the abilities of the new mobile suits, but were more impressed with how the gunner had taken out the Slash and Blaze. It had to be one of the best strategies they had ever seen, especially when the gunner was outnumbered. "Wow, whoever that is an incredible pilot to come up with a strategy like that," said Luna with stars in her eyes as she stared up at the gunner Zaku. She always had a thing for strong men in cool mobile suits and hoped she could meet that pilot one day. "Yeah, that was awesome," agreed Shin with a small smile, as he was more anxious than ever to get his own mobile suit. Ray just kept silent, but inwardly he was impressed as well. Whoever that pilot was, they were good. The only problem he had was that they never gave out the name of the pilots who were participating in the exercise. He would have to do some information searching to find out who the pilot is. Council chamber. "I believe that concludes our little demonstration. Now you see why I have recruited Captain Uzumaki to join Zaft," smiled Durandal. The council wouldn't dare question him again on the matter after seeing that display of Naruto's skill. He would have to thank the man properly for making his job that much easier with that display. There is no denying he is truly an ace pilot, but it remains to be seen if he is loyal to Zaft. For now though, I believe we all agree that he will be a great asset to Zaft should another war arise, said a council member with a nod of his head at the chairman. The other agreed, though a few reluctantly, while the general who started this whole argument just glared at Durandal angrily. "I am glad we have settled this matter and I look forward to speaking with you all again, but I am afraid that I need to get back to some business," bowed Durandal as he took his leave and the others started to leave as well. The chairman noticed the looks the general was giving him and decided he would have to do something about that man, but not right now. There would be plenty of time later to get rid of that particular nuisance. Break. Zaft grows stronger each day and I have no doubt the Earth forces are trying to rebuild their lost strength as well, thought Naruto as he stared up at Epion. "I thought I might find you here," said a familiar voice. Naruto glanced out of the corner of his eyes to see Chairman Durandal walk towards him before standing right next to him. "Chairman," greeted Naruto before returning to look up at Epion. The chairman nodded his head at the man as he too looked up at the intimidating Gundam. After a few minutes of silence, the chairman started to speak. "Congratulations on beating two of our best pilots. I think you have successfully convinced me to mass-producing ZAKUs, chuckled Durandal at the end. "They are superior to every other mobile suit I have seen besides a Gundam," said Naruto as they both continued to look at Epion. Yes, which brings me to the next reason why I am here. I was hoping you might be willing to offer some pointers to our pilots once they start mass-producing the Gunner and Warrior Zaku. I will be making the Blaze and /ZAKUs mostly for our elite, said Durandal as he glanced at Naruto. You want me to get to know the people of Zaft in attempt to make me more loyal to the plants and to your cause, stated Naruto knowingly. There is no need for that because I do not believe in betraying those that I work for, finished Naruto as Durandal could only smirk at the man's insight. Forgive me, but I should have known you would have seen the true reason I wanted you to do such a task, smirked Durandal. The man had just guaranteed him his loyalty with that last comment, and that is exactly what he wanted. I would like to request that when you assign me to a ship that it has a pilot that specializes in using a gunner Zaku. It would complement Epion's own abilities perfectly, said Naruto. Well, my people are working on developing a new warship and once it is complete I will be assigning you to it. I was going to assign 2 others depending on their progress until then, but I think I can assign 1 more to increase the efficiency of your own Gundam, said Durandal thoughtfully. Naruto just nodded his head because he knew what warship the man was speaking of since he had seen the designs for it. It truly is a magnificent sight, said Durandal as he stared up at Gundam Epion one last time before taking his leave. I can't wait to see what it is capable of, smirked Durandal as he left the hangar. Another war is coming, thought Naruto as his eyes hardened and Epion's own eyes seemed to glow a brilliant green in the moonlight, showing its anticipation to be able to fight. Hey Commander, how do you like the new Zaku Phantom? This is the first production model made, smirked Han as he cleaned off his hands with a rag. He was a young man in his early 20s, with short blonde hair and chocolate brown eyes. Though he was young, he was one of the top mechanics and technicians in Zaft. Impressive, said Naruto as he looked over the newest Zaft mobile suit. Yeah, unlike those prototype models that were used in that training exercise a few months ago, this model is completely finished. It can be installed with the Blaze or /Wizard pack and its maneuverability to perform a magnitude of tasks, smiled Han proudly as he had helped design this particular mobile suit. I am still pissed off that they rushed through making those 2 prototypes because it completely lowered their capabilities. If they would have just gave us some more time they would have performed much better than they did and probably wouldn't have been torn apart by that gunner pilot, sighed Han as he shook his head. Naruto didn't bother to say anything to that because he knew it was the truth. The Blaze and /Zaku should have performed better than they did against him. It was clearly obvious that they had been rushed and certain details were overlooked just to get them semi-battle ready. Will they be mass-producing these Phantom models? Asked Naruto. Nah. The average pilot wouldn't be able to bring out its full potential. These are reserved strictly for the aces, answered Han. So then most pilots will be receive of Zaku Warrior or Gunner, stated Naruto, to which Han nodded his head. Yep, but hey, you don't have to worry about it since you have that Oni Gundam of yours, smirked Han. Its name is Epion, frowned Naruto as he glanced down at the man. Looks more like a demon to me, shrugged Han, but gulped nervously as he saw that Naruto was glaring at him. He threw up his hands in surrender quickly before apologizing to the man for his comment. Name is Epion, got it, chuckled Han nervously. Commander Uzumaki really didn't have a sense of humor when it came to his Gundam. I will be back later to go over the full capabilities of this new unit, said Naruto as he turned away and started to leave. That's just great, we just get a fully functional production model, and he is going to destroy it with that damn Gundam of his. I mean, I know it's good to test the battle capabilities of every new unit, but does he really have to do it in a real-life battle simulation every time? Mumbled Han as he headed over to where his workers were. Chairman of Plants. Chairman Durandal was calmly sitting at his desk going over some records on his computer as he learned some recent news. It seemed that reports of Blue Cosmos activities were increasing on Zaft soldiers located on Earth, but there was no actual evidence to put the blame on them. He could only smirk at this development because he knew exactly why their attacks were rising so much lately. They were trying to find Naruto and were desperate to find any information they could on him. Fools, they should have never charged him with treason when he refused to hand over his Gundam, thought Durandal with an amused look in his eyes. Those fools were so desperate to get rid of the bad publicity that occurred from attempting to use nukes on the plants that they drove away their strongest ace. Durandal knew without a doubt that Naruto was far stronger, smarter, and intelligent than any coordinator he had ever met. The man was an absolute genius when it came to tactics, whether they be about battle or something trivial. The best part was that the man seemed to have something against traitors, so he didn't have to worry about him betraying Zaft. It didn't matter that he was looked down at from most of the council for recruiting him because of what he did to Boaz, as he would clearly make up for it in the next war by destroying many of the Earth Alliance forces. Everything is going according to plan. You truly are the most powerful person I have met, Naruto Uzumaki, but hopefully, once Shin receives the impulse, the seed in him will awaken. Then I will have someone to get rid of you when the time comes, since I can't have you around when I put in action my destiny plan, smiled Durandal as he leaned back in his chair. Plans. Mir was not having a good day. She had just got off work, and was going to head over to the studio to record a new song she had written, but found out that it was closed for the day. Now here she was sitting on this bench with nothing to do as she stared at the new song she had written. She had always loved singing and remembered spending all her free time singing when she was a child. It was her dream to become a famous singer like Lacus Clyne, and she had really worked out at it too. Of course, with Lacus being the daughter of the former chairman and a high-ranking member in the plants, it was almost impossible for her to get any recognition. Mir wasn't a jealous person by nature, but she was envious of Lacus because the girl had everything that she desired. A large part of her was happy when she found out that the girl had been labeled as a traitor, because it meant she now had a chance to rise up to stardom. Those dreams were quickly crushed though when she realized people of the plants still loved Lacus, especially when the girl had helped in ending the war. Life just wasn't fair, and she was beginning to lose faith that she would ever accomplish her dream. Little did she know, her whole life was about to change in a matter of moments. "Excuse me, miss, but are you Mir Campbell?" asked an older woman, wearing see-through shades and had short brown hair. Yes," blinked Mir, as she didn't recognize the woman. "A pleasure to meet you, Miss Campbell, and I hope in the future to know you better, but right now I am afraid I need you to come with me." "The chairman wishes to speak with you," said the woman with a friendly smile. "The chairman wants to see me," spluttered Mir with wide eyes, as she couldn't believe what she was hearing. Why would the chairman want to see her? "Yes, so if you would please come with me now, then the sooner you can meet with him and he will explain why he wanted to see you," smiled the woman as she held out her hand to Mir. Mir still had trouble believing that the chairman wanted to meet with her when she was just a small-time singer, but a flicker of hope started to burn. Maybe this would be her shot to finally achieve her dream. Then again, it could be something entirely else, but she was so desperate to become a star that she slowly let the woman help her up. "Thank you, now come," smiled the woman. Mir just nodded her head and followed next to the strange woman, not knowing that her whole world was about to change. Mir stared at herself in the mirror and felt extremely awkward as the face of Lacus Clyne stared back at her. Mir stared at herself in the mirror and felt extremely awkward as the face of Lacus Clyne stared back at her. Long beautiful pink hair, gorgeous light blue eyes and a pretty heart-shaped face is all Mir saw as she looked at her reflection in the mirror. There was no denying the fact that she could easily pass for Lacus Clyne's twin, as they looked identical now, but there was still a major difference. Thought she may look and sound like Lacus Clyne, Mir did not possess any of the other girl's personality. She was still the attention-seeking woman she always had been, which is the main reason why she agreed to impersonate Lacus Clyne. Chairman Durandal promised her that she would become a star just as she always dreamt, but to do so she would have to impersonate Lacus by having her genes altered to look just like her. Mir was insulted that he wanted to change how she looked, but the chairman just had a way with words that made her agree and forget that she would be recognized not as herself, but as Lacus Clyne. "Can I really do this? Do I really have the right or what it takes to act as Lacus-sama?" thought Mir with a troubled look in her eyes as she continued to stare at her reflection in the mirror. Armory 1. "Captain, where are we going again?" asked Arthur sheepishly. Arthur was an average-sized man with short brown hair and wore a Zaft uniform that signified his rank as lieutenant. He was walking next to the woman he had started to work under for the past 3 months and held great respect for her. Captain Gladys was a beautiful woman with brown hair that fell just short of her shoulders and beautiful piercing blue eyes. Like many other women who were coordinators, she had a very desirable physique and flawless skin. She wore a white Zaft uniform to show her rank as a commander and walked with grace and authority through the streets of Armory 1. "Try to pay attention, Arthur. "We are here to meet with one of the pilots who will be assigned to the Minerva when it is finally completed," sighed Captain Gladys. "Sorry ma'am, it just you never told me his name so I forgot," replied Arthur apologetically. Captain Gladys frowned at that comment because the truth was that the chairman never gave her the name of the pilot either. They were just ordered to report to a certain hangar at a designated time to meet with the pilot. "I wish I knew his name, but the chairman left that little detail out," frowned Captain Gladys. "I wonder why he would do that," said Arthur thoughtfully. "It is possible that it slipped his mind or something along those lines. Either way, it doesn't matter now since it is too late to do anything about it," replied Captain Gladys. Arthur nodded his head in agreement and the two walked in silence the rest of the way. "Here we are, Hangar 6, said Arthur before following behind Captain Gladys. "Aren't the Gaia, Chaos, and Abyss located in over by this hangar?" asked Captain Gladys curiously as they entered the hangar and found it completely empty except for one man in the distance. They both noticed he seemed to be staring up at something and followed his gaze to see a mobile suit they had never seen before. "Is that a new Gundam?" gasped Arthur with a slight shiver as he found it to look a little on the demonic side for his tastes. "I wasn't aware there were any other Gundams besides the three I mentioned earlier and the newly built Impulse," frowned Captain Gladys as they approached the man. He didn't seem to realize anyone else was in the room with him as he continued to stare up at the scary-looking mobile suit. "Excuse me?" said Captain Gladys, causing the man to turn to look at them. If there was one thing that Captain Gladys was proud of, it was the fact that she had a very tight control over her emotions and didn't let anything shake her. This didn't seem to matter though, as she couldn't stop herself from gulping nervously as the man slowly turned to gaze at her with such piercing cold blue eyes that seemed to bore right into her very soul. She noticed that Arthur seemed to have shivered and even took a reflexive step backwards as the man's eyes turned to gaze at him for a moment. "I take it you are Captain Talia Gladys and Executive Office Arthur Trine," stated the man as it wasn't a question. "Yes I am, and I take it you are the pilot we are supposed to meet," replied Captain Gladys with a small smile. Naruto Uzumaki greeted the man with a nod of his head. "It is a pleasure to meet you, Commander Uzumaki," smiled Talia. Arthur just gave the man a small hesitant smile as he saluted him. Naruto just nodded his head and returned to gazing up at Epion while Arthur and Talia just looked at him curiously. There was silence for about a minute until Talia realized she would have to be the one to break the silence. "Commander Uzumaki, if it isn't too much trouble, could you tell us about this mobile suit?" "It isn't a model that I recognize at all," said Talia as she looked up at Epion. "This disc contains all the details about Gundam Epion," said Naruto as he pulled out a small disc from inside his uniform and handed it to the woman. "Gundam Epion? I thought the Impulse, Gaia, Chaos, and Abyss were the only new Gundams built," frowned Arthur in confusion. "They were," replied Naruto as he turned to look at them both before walking away in the opposite direction of which they came. Talia raised her eyebrow at that because he just agreed with Arthur, yet here stood this fifth Gundam. "He sure is a strange one, Captain," said Arthur as he tried to lighten the mood. "Indeed, but it is probably best if you don't comment too much on his strange behavior, seeing as how he outtranks us both," replied Captain Gladys seriously. Arthur just nodded his head as he followed his captain out of the hangar. Chairman of Plants. Ray is a promising up-and-coming pilot as he had graduated from the military trainee color as a Zaft Red. He is respected by a great many of his peers for his skills and his analytical mind. The only problem was that he isn't a very popular person as he tended not to interact with anyone. All he ever does is training or work on the mobile suit he had been assigned. Of course, there were many things about Ray that remained a mystery to everyone except certain individuals. One of those things is that he is on very good terms with the current chairman of the Plants and Zaft. People didn't know this because he never mentioned anything about it or approached the chairman when he visited Armory 1 where Ray stayed. Had they known, Ray would probably be more popular amongst his peers and some of the older personnel in Zaft. Right now he is on the way to meet with the chairman as he wished to ask him about a certain pilot that he had met almost a year ago. If there was one flaw about Ray other than his medical problems, it is the fact that when something caught his interest, he tended to try everything he could to learn more about it. The only problem was that he could find nothing about the man he had met so long ago. His picture wasn't in any database. All he was able to learn about the man was his name, and that he is a pilot with unrivaled skill. He hoped the chairman would tell him more about the man, as he is very curious as to his origins. "Come in," said a familiar voice after Ray knocked on the door. Ray calmly entered the room and quickly saluted Chairman Durandal, who was sitting behind his desk. "Ray, what a pleasant surprise. I must admit I was not expecting to see you today," smiled Durandal as he gestured for the boy to have a seat. "I don't mean to interrupt you, Chairman, but I was hoping you could answer a few questions that have been bothering me lately," frowned Ray slightly before taking a seat. "Oh, what questions would those be?" asked Durandal with a raised eyebrow. It was rare to see Ray with such an expression on his face because usually the boy was so composed. He wondered what could be bothering him so much. "I was hoping you could tell me more about Commander Naruto Uzumaki. I tried to look up his history, but there is no data at all on him," answered Ray, causing Durandal to chuckle lightly. "Tell you the truth, I am no longer surprised to see you here today because I had a feeling you would be asking me about him eventually," smiled Durandal. Ray just remained silent and waited for the chairman to continue. "The reason you won't find any history on Commander Uzumaki is because of the simple fact that we have none. He was not born in the plants, and when I offered him the opportunity to join Zaft, I admit I wasn't too concerned about his history, though I am curious about it myself," confessed Durandal. Ray frowned at this because it seemed foolish to allow someone to achieve such a high rank when knowing nothing about them. They could be a possible spy or a vast number of other possibilities. Further thoughts were interrupted, as the chairman seemed to sense his distress. "I can tell you think that I may have made an unwise decision in recruiting him without knowing anything about his past, but I assure you he is not a threat to us in any way," said Durandal, though inside he was thinking to add, "at the moment," to the end of that statement. "He is a valuable asset to Zaft and will be a great aid in the future. I apologize for not being able to tell you more, but I ask you to trust my judgment on this matter," smiled Durandal warmly. "Of course, sir, I didn't mean to see if I doubted you," apologized Ray with a hard look in his eyes. Durandal smiled at that because he enjoyed the fact that Ray was completely loyal to him and only him. Break. Naruto was sitting in one of the parks located at Armory 1 in the public district and enjoying the cool breeze. It was incredibly silent and Naruto had his eyes lightly closed as he listened to the sounds of nature. Now when Naruto listened to the sounds of nature, it meant that he was listening to the wind, the plants, the organisms living in the ground, and many other things naturals or coordinators couldn't hear. He is connected with the environment in a way that would make any scientist extremely jealous. Humans have always wondered what it would be like if they could speak with animals or the plants. Naruto didn't have to wonder because it was something he learned to do in his immortal life long ago. He found listening to the conversations of nature to be far more enjoyable than listening to that of humans. It was like a sweet music to him that put him in a state of calm and peace, which let him forget about everything around him. Speaking of music, a light yet beautiful sound entered his ears that wasn't part of nature's natural song and made him open his eyes slowly. Thought Naruto as he listened to the sound. Whoever was singing had a beautiful voice, but there was something about the song. It sounded so sad and full of pain, so he did something unexpected and decided to find the person singing. In a matter of moments, he arrived at the small pond where a beautiful young woman was walking around while singing. Naruto's eyes narrowed because the young woman looked just like Lacus Cline, but he could tell that even though she looked almost like Lacus, there were a few subtle differences that his eyes could pick up. The real Lacus Cline's hair was a lighter shade of pink and the way the two moved was different as well. The only real thing that confused him is why some girl would transform her whole look permanently to pose as someone else. Oh well, it wasn't his problem, and besides he enjoyed her singing, so decided to merely stay in the shadow of a nearby tree and listen to her song. He leaned against the tree with his eyes closed and enjoyed the beautiful sounds that filled the air. Mir had decided to go out to get some fresh air, as she was tired of staying inside and studying Lacus Cline's behavior. All she had been doing for the past week is learning everything she could about Lacus Cline. How she acted, how she dressed, and every other little thing she did. She just wished she could start singing at a concert like she always dreamed instead of having to go through all this trouble. These were just some of the many thoughts that crossed her mind as she walked around the pond and started to sing. Singing always helped relax her, which is why she was out here singing one of the songs she had wrote a while back. Unfortunately, she was so focused on singing that she didn't watch her step and ended up tripping. She gasped before closing her eyes as she was about to splash face first into the pond. Right as she was about to hit the water, she felt herself stop, and opened her eyes in confusion. She found herself inches away from the surface of the water before something pulled her back up. "Thank you," said Mira as she looked up at her savior with a beautiful smile on her face, but gulped nervously as she found herself staring into a pair of cold, emotionless sky-blue eyes. The man was gorgeous and Mir actually blushed as she got a good look at his body as she seemed to forget about his cold blue eyes. "Are you okay?" asked the man, not knowing why he cared to begin with. "Yes, I was scared there for a moment," flushed Mir as she realized she was gripping his hand and quickly broke free with a deep blush on her face. Replied the man before walking away much to the woman's surprise. Wait, don't go," whispered Mir with a sad look in her eyes. She was tired of being alone and was hoping maybe she could talk with the man for a bit, but even as Lacus it seemed people still ignored her presence. "What is it you want?" asked the man as he stopped walking and glanced over at the young woman. Stuttered Mir before sighing. "I just wondering if you would let me properly thank you for helping me out. Would you like maybe to join me as I walk around the park?" asked Mir hopefully. The man just stared at the young woman and saw how desperate she was for company. It was a feeling he could relate to as he spent much of his younger life all alone as an outcast in his village. This changed nothing though, he still didn't care about anything other than fighting as he nodded his head to the young woman. "My name is Lacus," smiled Mir as she quickly corrected herself from saying her true name. "Naruto," said the man as he started to walk next to the girl. He just remained silent and only replied when he had to as the girl started to chat away to him. "Come on Dobi, that be all you got," smirked Sasuke as he tried to control his breathing and ignore his aching muscles. "You wish Teme. I am just getting warmed up," grinned Naruto as his right arm hung limp at his side. The two had been sparring for the past hour and neither was willing to admit defeat to the other. Sharingan red eyes stared into determined sky blue eyes and both boys had large smiles on their face as they stared each other down. They were more than rivals, they were brothers and pushed each other to their limits to help one another achieve their dreams. If one were to see them, they would never believe that in the future these two would become the greatest of enemies. It just went to show that one could never determine the future when the closest of friends could become the greatest of enemies. How pointless, thought Naruto as he stared up at Epion through narrowed eyes. He had just received a vision of his past, which was strange because Epion never sent him any visions. Could it be that it was finally speaking to him other than its desire to battle? Or maybe, Wing Zero wasn't as gone as he believed it to be and was trying to reach out to him. Either way, he wasn't going to dwell on the past as he had more important things to deal with. Whether you sent it to me or Zero did it doesn't matter. I was not changed the first time and I won't be this time either. You waste your time, thought Naruto as he turned his back on Epion and left the hangar. He refused to admit that the vision was affecting him in any way, but to the trained eye, one could easily see the slightly troubled look in his eyes. Armory 1. Stay on course Luna, said Ray harshly, as they floated in space each in their own mobile suits. Ray was assigned a Zaku Phantom that he had painted white so that it stood out from others. This was common among aces, as they wanted to show that they were of higher skill by being allowed to have their own customized unit. Yeah I know, just calm down Ray, replied Luna through gritted teeth as she was started to become tired of his attitude. She knew this was just the way he was, but sometimes he could be so damn frustrating that she just wanted to punch him. Luna Maria had been assigned a Gunner Zaku, which is what she had requested before even graduating from the academy. She would have liked to have a Gundam like Shin, but knew that even though she was better than most, she didn't have enough skill to warrant her being a Gundam pilot. That suited her fine because truthfully, she had been dying to be pilot of a Gunner Zaku ever since she saw that training exercise about a year ago. Like Ray, her mobile suit was custom painted, but is in a reddish-pink color. Found you too, smirked Shin as he started to fire upon them with the Impulse's beam rifle. Stick to the plan, ordered Ray before they split up and started to return fire upon Shin. The Impulse showed off its amazing capabilities as it easily weaved in and out of the shots fired at it. One could easily tell that it was superior to the two Zaku, but that didn't mean it had the complete advantage. It was still a 2-on-1 fight and that made all the difference. Luna and Ray may not get along all that well socially, but when it came to a fight they put their differences aside and were able to complement each other perfectly. Damn, I forgot how well they worked together, cursed Shin as he used his shield to block several shots from Rei before dodging to the side to avoid being hit by Luna's ortho beam cannon. Wow, you are getting better, Shin, grinned Luna as she started to take aim again. What is that supposed to mean? Glared Shin before firing several more shots at Rei as he noticed his friend trying to close in on him. Right in the middle of the fight, something went wrong, and all of their screens went black. Shin and Luna both cursed angrily while Rei just sighed as he exited his cockpit. Damn it! What is up with the power lately? Demanded Luna angrily as their simulation was interrupted for the second time that day. I don't know, but I hope they fix it soon, said Shin as he was lowered to the ground. They are working on the finishing touches of the Minerva so that it will be battle ready by the end of the week, which is why they are directing most of the power to its hangar, explained Rei before heading out of the hangar with Shin and Luna following besides him. Guess we won't be getting any training done besides our shooting exercises then, pouted Luna, as she preferred the simulation exercises. Hey, doesn't that man look familiar? Asked Luna as she pointed at a commander coming out of a hangar over by them. Yeah, but I can't remember who he is, frowned Shin. His name is Commander Uzumaki and a member of Faith. We met him that one day when we were taking a look at the first production gunner-type model mobile suit, said Rei as he watched the man through narrowed eyes. Oh my gosh, he is the pilot of the gunner Zaku that was used in that training exercise that we were allowed to watch in the academy, gasped Luna, causing Shin and Rei to look at her curiously. She noticed the looks they were giving her and quickly composed herself as she didn't want them to know that she had a slight crush on the commander. He doesn't look all that great to me, scoffed Shin. Luna just sighed before smacking him upside the head. You can be such an idiot at times. He is one of the top pilots, if not the top pilot in Zaft, said Luna as she shook her head at Shin. Sometimes Shin's arrogance just bordered on stupidity as he ended up saying things that he should have not said at all. She is right, it would not do to underestimate him. He was personally recruited to Zaft by the chairman, and he is a member of Faith, agreed Rei. Fine, but enough talk. I am hungry so I am going to get something to eat. I'll catch up with you both later, said Shin as he headed over to the market district. I am going to see how the finishing touches on the Minerva are going because word has it the chairman will be visiting soon to overlook the final stages himself, said Rei before taking his leave. I'll go see how Myron is doing, shrugged Luna. Break. Do you really think that is the proper thing to be wearing to a meeting like this? Asked Alex as he walked next to the current leader of Orb. If were one to look closely they would notice, he looked remarkably like the former pilot of the Justice, Athran Zala. What is wrong with what I am wearing? Replied Kigali angrily. She was wearing an expensive suit that made her look every inch of a serious businesswoman. I am just saying that you have an image to uphold, and even though this is merely a visit with the chairman, you still need to keep up appearances. Never forget that you are now the leader of a nation, explained Alex seriously. I know that, sighed Kigali as they entered the elevator. Alex just smiled softly as he placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder before changing the subject. How come you want to meet with the chairman anyway? This meeting does seem kind of sudden, said Alex curiously. It was the only time that I could find to meet with him as he is always so busy. I want to talk about him with all the reports I have been getting about the building up of Zaft military power during times of peace. I am afraid if this continues that it will shatter the peace we have worked so hard to create, said Kigali as she clenched her fists tightly. I see, frowned Alex. He understood what she was trying to say, but didn't know if that was something she really had to criticize Zaft about as Orb had been keeping their own updating their own forces with all the new technology that had come about in the past year and a half. The last thing we need is another war to start. So many were lost in the last one and we still haven't fully recovered from that. Another war would just cause more pointless deaths, said Kigali grimly. She could still remember the look on her father's face as he pushed her into the shuttle while he stayed behind and burned down with Orb just to prevent the Earth forces from obtaining their mass driver. Orb had been rebuilt, but there was still much work to be done and she would not watch as her nation was dragged into another war. No matter what, she would do whatever it took to keep her nation safe and not let it fall ever again. The two couldn't say anything else as they reached the bottom floor and the doors opened. They exited the elevator and were surprised to see the chairman had just entered the building and was walking straight towards them. "Princess, it is an honor to finally meet you," smiled Durandal warmly. Alex noticed the chairman glance at him and kept his face neutral so that no one would recognize him. He was dressed in some casual clothes and wearing some blue, see-through shades so he wouldn't stand out and remain inconspicuous. "Chairman, it is a pleasure to finally meet you as well, and thank you for agreeing to meet with me on such short notice," bowed Kigali, which Durandal mimicked. "I would have met with you sooner, but I hope you understand that I have been increasingly busy as of lately." "You can understand how hard it is to run a nation," said Durandal, the smile never leaving his face. "Of course," conceded Kigali as they continued to make small talk. "I take it this is your bodyguard?" asked Durandal as he glanced at Alex. He didn't miss the fact that he looked remarkably like the former chairman's son and Zath pilot, Athran Zala. "Yes, his name is Alex," replied Kigali before changing the subject. She didn't want Alex's true identity to be discovered, so quickly went on to the main reason why she was here. Perhaps I can ease your mind if I show you around our facilities. I hope that I will be able to convince you as to why you have received the reports you have," gestured Durandal. "Very well," agreed Kigali as she started to walk besides the man and out of the building. Alex just walked silently behind them, followed by several of the chairman's own bodyguards. Elsewhere, "Man, this place is boring," complained Owl as he walked next to his fellow comrade Stain. Owl possessed short blue hair, hazel-colored eyes, and looked to be around the age of 17 or 18. "Don't worry, once we are given the word, we will have some fun, and you can destroy this entire place," smirked Stain. He was around the same age as Owl, but possessed short green hair and light brown eyes that were half-lidded to show his boredom. "Hee, I can't wait until we can destroy this damn place," laughed Owl. His laughing was interrupted when he noticed his other comrade had started to dance. "What the hell is she doing?" frowned Owl as he glanced at the only female member of the squad. Playing the role of a ditzy airhead, shrugged Sting as he continued to walk. "Let's go, Stella, you can play around later," yelled Owl with a scowl on his face. Stella was a beautiful young woman with short blonde hair and enticing chocolate brown eyes. Right now, she was standing in front of a shop window staring at a dress and picturing how it looked on her. A large smile appeared on her face before she started to dance around without a care in the world. It would seem to most that she was strange, but the fact was she was mentally unstable, much like her comrades, except it was more prominent in her. This was a great advantage to her as it helped immensely with her job because people tended to underestimate her due to her condition, and she was able to easily dispatch of them. She was so focused on twirling around that she didn't watch where she was going and ended up bumping into someone, but they caught her before she fell. "Whoa, you should watch where you are going," said Shin as he dropped his groceries and held the girl in his arm. Stella looked up at him curious before an angry scowl appeared on her face. She quickly knocked Shin to the ground, then ran off to catch up with her two teammates. Shin watched her run off with a confused look on his face, but snapped out of it when he heard his friend laughing at him. "Oh, shut up," grumbled Shin as he picked up his groceries. "Chairman and orb representatives, all this power isn't necessary, it will only lead to more suspicious from other nations, which could lead to another war," argued Kigali as she glared at the chairman. "I mean, no offense, princess, but," started Durandal, but before he could finish several loud explosions occurred. The chairman's bodyguards quickly ran to his side while Alex grabbed Kigali and dragged her off somewhere safe. Alarms started to sound everywhere and soldiers raced to their stations to figure out exactly what was going on. "Damn it, what is going on?" demanded Durandal. "Hurry, sir, we need to get you to safety," said one of the bodyguards as he gestured for the chairman to follow him and his men. Durandal just nodded his head as more explosions started to occur throughout Armory 1. "Athran, what is going on?" asked Kigali as they ran to somewhere safe. "I don't know, but we need to get you out of here, or at least somewhere safe." "I won't let you die in a place like this," replied Athran as he looked around everywhere for a safe place to hide or something. "If you are so anxious to leave, then take this, Zaku," said an unfamiliar voice. Athran and Kigali both turned their heads quickly to see a man leaning against one of the hangar walls with his arms crossed across his chest. "He looks familiar, but I don't know why," thought Athran as he studied the man carefully. He was wearing a commander's uniform and had piercing sky-blue eyes that were lifeless. "It would be a shame if you were to die here, Athran Zala," said the man, causing both of their eyes to widen. Before they could say anything else, a loud explosion rocked the area, and the two were forced to use their arms to shield themselves from the dust. When it finally settled down, they looked up to see that the man had disappeared, and they were once again by themselves. "Come on, we need to get to that mobile suit and escape before we get caught in whatever is happening," yelled Athrun as he dragged Kigali over to the Zaku. "Okay," spluttered Kigali as she tore her mind off the strange man they had just met. Elsewhere, Naruto watched as the Gaia, Chaos, and Abyss started to destroy everything in Armory 1 through emotionless sky-blue eyes. He would go out there to help, but first he had to make sure that boy made it out of here alive. Athrun Zala was one of the few people who could offer him a challenge in battle and maybe stood the chance of beating him, which would grant him his wish to die in battle like he so desperately wanted. So another war begins, thought Naruto impassively, as the impulse showed up and started to battle the three stolen Gundams. The sounds of battle reached his ears and his body started to relax. It was not surprising to see a man who had spent all his life fighting in pointless wars to feel most at comfort when a battle was going on, but it was sad. For a soul to find more comfort in warfare than in peace was just terrible, and yet there stood Naruto, perfectly calm with his eyes closed, but still able to see everything that was going on. "Your desire to fight is raising Epion, and it seems I will be able to cage you no longer. I have no doubt together we will cause much destruction. I only hope someone is able to kill us before we both go too far," thought Naruto as he slowly opened his eyes before disappearing in a swirl of leaves. So began the Second Bloody Valentine War, one that was just as horrible as the first, and caused the death of many more innocents.
That's all for now. If you enjoy this video, then please like, share and do comments.